Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto married with Yugito and have child, part 1. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, and also check the description. So let's begin the story. It has been 2 years, 3 months, 22 days, 4 hours, and 33 minutes since the day Naruto and Jiraiya made their departure from Konohagakure. It all started with a blind promise to a pink-haired girl, an undeniable sense of justice to protect his best friend from the clutches of an Irohibi, and a never-ending quest to prove his worth to everyone who has ever doubted him. The day he left the village, all these things bore heavy on his heart and heavy on his mind. But now things have changed for the blind. He no longer was the blonde loudmouth, dim-witted, ramen-loving genin he once was. Training with Jiraiya had opened up his eyes to the real world. The real world of the shinobi. Growing up, he was always told by his peers about the cold facts of the shinobi world, but he had never really experienced them firsthand. A year deep in training with Jiraiya, the legend decided that it was about time for Naruto to experience his first real mission. Between the releases of his ever-popular Iro book series, he would take on various assignments to help keep the food on the table and the women happy in the bars, which was also becoming a rare commodity thanks to his annoying little pupil. Ever since he had decided to bring Naruto along as his apprentice, the blonde baka had been messing up all his elaborate plans to collect information. Naruto once used his Warak no Jutsu to catch his sensei in the act of peeking in a very popular hot spring about 3 months on the trip. Safe to say Jiraiya will always thank Naruto for all of his painful memories of his visit there. The job was a simple one, escorting a traveler from one town to the next. The client was carrying some very rare weapons that could sell for quite a penny to antique collectors overseas. The neighboring city just happened to be a port city with a boat waiting for the client as soon as he got there. Apparently bandits had already attacked this man 3 times already. Luckily for him, he was able to survive those attacks. His stubbornness was the only thing that kept him doing this profession, and probably the only thing that kept him alive those times too. But this time he was playing it differently. He saw how large Jiraiya was and the shiftiness in his eye, and just knew he was strong. Little did he know the only reason why Jiraiya was looking like that at the time was because of an all-nighter he had pulled the previous night gathering more research for his book. "Excuse me, sir." "Sir," the man tapped on Jiraiya's shoulder and nearly leaped out of his shoes when he saw the look Jiraiya gave him. "Sorry sir, I didn't mean to disturb you, but I have a request for you. You look like a strong man and all, and I'm pretty sure you are more than enough for the job I'll have for you. I'll pay you well." Jiraiya narrowed his eyes and stared at the man closely before standing up straight and shaking his head. "Sorry, I haven't done any research on men." Suddenly the man's eardrums nearly exploded due to the sound of laughter coming from behind the man. "Knew you were many things, Hiro-senin, but I never pegged you for any." The man got a glimpse at the blonde teenager as he rolled on the floor with laughter. He was holding his stomach like it was about to burst. "Irasai!" Jiraiya yelled as he kicked Naruto in the side, causing him to yell out in pain. In an instant, the blonde was on his feet and in Jiraiya's face. "What was that for?" "Sorry for the confusing, sir, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted to hire you for an escort job." "Escort job, eh? Where to?" "At Sumi Port. I'm willing to pay you half now and half there upon arrival." "And why are you asking me for this job?" "Well, I figured you'd be strong and all due to your size, and all." Jiraiya chuckled as he turned around and glanced at Naruto, who had decided that the conversation was too boring for him to follow, and went back to his delicious bowl of ramen. That was when the idea hit Jiraiya. It would prove to be perfect training for him, and also give him the free time he needed to enjoy himself more. "Well, I'm sorry to say that I can't take you up on your offer, but I know someone who is strong as well, and could do just as good of a job as me." "Who would that be, sir?" Jiraiya turned around and glanced at Naruto in an obvious manner, causing the stranger to follow his eyes. "Him, sir," he said using a questioning tone. "Oh, don't worry about anything. He may look like a baka, but he is quite capable of defending you and himself. The guy is practically his own little army, ready for anything. Ain't that right, Naruto?" Naruto mumbles something as he starts on his 4th bowl of ramen. "The kid can eat, can he? You don't know half of it. This is only his brunch before dinner. By the way, what's your name?" "Ren." "Good to meet you, Ren. I'm Jiraiya and this is Uzumaki Naruto, and he would love to escort you to Itsumi Port." At the time Naruto had decided to come back into the conversation and was more than shocked to hear what they were talking about. "What do you mean, eh? It's been decided already, you are escorting him to the next town." "Nani? What about you, Hiro-senin?" "Me? I'm staying here, of course. Thanks to a certain annoying blunderhead, I'm more than behind on my next book, and this would give me ample time to catch up. But don't worry boy, he did say he will pay us well." "Speaking of which, how much are we talking here?" "I was thinking 10,000 now and 10,000 when we get there." Naruto immediately began to add up the number of ramen bowls he could buy for that amount. "Fine, I'll be taking the first 10,000 now." "Nani? Hey, this is my share of the loot. But I'm doing all of the work." Consider this the type of training that you are also paid for. I'll even let you keep the other half when you get there. Sounds like a plan. Hehe, whatever. Naruto sat back down to finish his last bowl before heading out with Ren to begin his mission. Jiraiya just merely smiled as he watched the two walk off. Finally, I can get some work done. He got up and began to head to his favorite bar, where the ladies were always happy to see him when his pockets were full. The trip was a pretty average trip when it came to length. Ren estimated that it would take them about a full day worth of traveling if they didn't make any unnecessary stops. The two of them didn't even speak a word until about the third hour into the trip, where Naruto began to sigh. So why are we heading to Itsumi? Naruto asked, trying to break the ice between them. I need to transport these all the way to my boss. He sells these to all types of rich folk for a lot of money. Naruto glanced at the large bag that he had tied around his waist. He had been wondering for a while now what it was, and he had his suspicions, but didn't feel like asking about them. Cool, why do you need a bodyguard for this? Well, I've already been attacked by thieves 3 times, and this time the boss finally gave me enough to also hire a bodyguard too. Naruto nearly choked on his own spit. 3 times? Yup, you're lucky to be alive, Aji-san. I would have quit this job after the first one. Please call me Ren, and I would if I could use Uzumaki-san. Come on, call me Naruto. He cracked his patented smile that was highly contagious, judging from the fact that everyone who saw it couldn't help but to smile too, and Ren was no exception. How old are you, Naruto-san? Ren asked as he looked up at him. Surprisingly enough, the runt of the Konoha 9 had gone on a huge growing spurt. He now stood over 5'10" with a very strong frame. The type of training Jiraiya had been putting him through easily worked through his baby fat and replaced all of it with iron hard muscle. 14 years old. Are you sure we will be okay then? I mean, you still are a kid and all. I'm not a kid, I'm a shinobi. Shinobi. Naruto nods as he points up to his Konoha hit I-8 with a large grin on his face. It was easy to tell that he had great pride in his village. Yeah, I will become the greatest Hokage in the history of Konoha. Are you that great of a shinobi, Naruto-san? You better believe I am. He cracked that contagious smile again, causing Ren to laugh out loud. Feeling a little bit more confident about his new bodyguard, Ren convinced Naruto to allow them to set up camp for the night. Naruto created a fire using one of the Jiraiya had taught him and cooked up some instant ramen. You really like ramen, huh, Naruto-san? Best food in the world. Want some? No, I'm fine. It wasn't long before the two of them fell asleep. Naruto was actually the first to go, leaving Ren a little worried, but he soon found enough peace for himself to be able to fall asleep soon after. The night was still, not even the crickets were chirping that night. The soothing breeze of the wind made everything feel just that much more comfortable. It was definitely a peaceful night, a little too peaceful. Ren quickly woke up to see the horrifying sight of a kunai pointing directly at his neck. Damn, not again. Suddenly the intruder dropped the kunai as he literally fell on top of Ren. Freaking out and fearing for his life, Ren pushed the man off of him and started to run, but was caught by surprise when he saw not 1, not 2, but 5 Narutos beating the hell out of the other bandits without much trouble at all. Naruto-san? Is this what Jiraiya-san meant by him being his own army? Suddenly Ren was met with yet another kunai to the throat. Yeah, that is quite the sight, eh? Never thought that a young Konohanin would cause us this much trouble. The bandit said as he began to twirl the kunai deeper into Ren's skin, drawing blood from his neck. And too bad that he was too much of a greenhorn to not think that we would have more. Actually, I figured the leader would be showing himself pretty soon, so I made it look like I wasn't expecting more. The hooded bandit turned around to see a kunai pointing at his forehead. Not bad at all. I guess I did underestimate you, huh? I might have some fun after all. As soon as he finished his speech, a 7th Naruto appeared from the rock that was sitting next to them and slashed his kunai at the bandit's head. The bandit was just quick enough to dodge the attack, but his hood was swiped off, revealing the long flowing blonde hair of a female. Her long hair was tied into a tail that stretched all the way down her back. Her azure shaded eyes were almost as equally mesmerizing as Naruto's cerulean eyes. The one thing that stuck out the most was her hit I-8 that carried the symbol of Kumagakure. The girl, is that a problem? Naruto smirked as he crouched in a defensive stance. Nope, not at all. The blonde Kunoichi was the first to make a move as she used her incredible speed to get within striking distance of Naruto quicker than he had originally predicted of her. He was barely able to put up his kunai to fend off her attack. What's wrong, boy? Thought you were tough enough to actually fight me. Don't disappoint me now. Don't worry about that. I was just testing you. Testing me? 4 Naruto suddenly leaped at her with kunai in each hand, attacking her relentlessly. She was forced off of the first one in order to defend herself from the new 4. Her speed was amazing indeed. Naruto could barely keep up with her movements with his own eyes. Seems I'm going to have to take this up a notch, the Kunoichi yelled as her body literally burst into blue flames, burning all of the clones that were once attacking her. Is that all you got? Naruto merely smirked as he slowly lifted his left hand and yelled, Kai, releasing the hat he had placed on his body, revealing a katana with a dark blue hilt. Is that katana supposed to scare me? Hell, I would be. He slowly unsheathed the blade from his back and went through several seals with his free hand. The blade began to pulsate an enormous amount of chakra as the wind around them began to pick up. Scared yet? No, but I'm interested. Naruto tightly gripped the hilt of his katana and began to slash in the air. I'm over here, boy. I know, Naruto yelled as the wind began to pick up even more, causing the Kumo Kunoichi to become a tad bit worried. Suddenly the slashes Naruto was making became violent waves of wind crashing towards the Kunoichi. She was forced to evade quickly as she watched one of the waves slashed right through a tree. She quickly scrambled to her feet but was met with a very excited Naruto as he made yet another swipe at her head. She put up her kunai to guard her life, but she watched the blade sliced right through her kunai and nearly through her head if she hadn't ducked quickly enough. She sent a swift kick to his stomach, knocking him on his back. She quickly leaped up to her feet and smiled down at him. It seems that you still have a long way to go with your swordsmanship. Well, until next time, wait, let me get your name so I can carve it on your gravestone for next time. Naruto glared up at her. It's polite to give your name first before asking for someone else's. Oh, the polite one, huh? Fine, I'm Yugito of Kumagakure. Well, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, the future Rakudame of Konohagakure. Another cage hopeful, eh? Well, until we meet again, Naruto. Yugito said as she shushed Ed off in a cloud of smoke. Naruto-san. You alright, Ren? Yeah, I'm fine. Who were they? Looks like the guys who were attacking you were from Kumo. Kumo? Yeah, a village like mine, born to breed shinobi. Now you are going to have to tell me what it is you are carrying. What do you mean by that, Naruto-san? These are just antique weapons, relics, they should be of no use to anyone anymore. Someone high up thinks otherwise since they have Kumo-nin after you. What now then, Naruto-san? Well, I say we should leave now. How much longer do we have before we get there? If we leave now we should make it there by noon. Yosh. Let's go. Naruto went through another set of seals, activating another he learned from Jiraiya that allowed him to wipe a campground clean, not leaving even the slightest trace of anyone being there. Ren glanced over at the unconscious men and looked back at Naruto. What about Naruto-san? Let them sleep. We have to move out before the Kumo Kunoichi brings back friends. I think I underestimated you too, Naruto-san. When I first saw you I thought you were just a baka. Yeah, I get that a lot. Now, let's go. As the two of them set out, Naruto could sense the faint trail of the Kunoichi he had just met from Kumo and knew that she was somewhere near them. For that reason alone he kept his katana at his side. A memento handed down from his father to Jiraiya to give to him when he felt he was ready. The blade was named after the great typhoons that once dispersed out of a great threat to the 5 great nations known as the Kamikaze. It is said that this katana was one of the few artifacts that were blessed by the divine gods. These weapons had been sought after for ages, yet those who wield them never could bring out the true strength of the weapons. To their hands they were merely tools, and not the blessed weapons that they were said to be. Naruto's father, Minato, was among the first to learn that the key to awakening the latent powers of these artifacts were the dot. The Yondaime didn't understand why this was the key, but he knew that this would also aid his unborn son in his growth. Jiraiya didn't quite understand where he got such a powerful weapon from, but knew that if his greatest pupil wouldn't relinquish the facts to him, then there must have been more than a good reason for his sewed lips. The two of them finally set foot in Itsumi, just as the sun was at its highest peak in the sky. Naruto finally felt comfortable enough to resheathe his kamikaze and mask it with his dot. Jiraiya had told him the importance of the blade and how he must keep it hidden at all costs. Naruto's stomach began to growl as soon as they reached the center of the city. Well, this is where we part, Naruto-san. Thank you for everything. Ren shook Naruto's hand as he handed him his reward for the escort. No problem, Ren. After you complete this, I highly recommend finding a new line of work. As if your work is any safer. Ren said as he smiled before walking off. Now where in this little town can I find a good bowl of ramen? Naruto began to sniff in the air, hoping his nose could lead him to the gold, and by the blessing of dumb luck, he managed to discover the one restaurant in town that actually sold hot miso ramen. With his pay for his work he could have all the bowls he wanted. As he sat down and began to order his food, he happened to catch a glance of another blonde in the shop, and at the same time she looked over at him. "Huh. You both?" Yugito and Naruto yelled at the same time as they both stood up and pointed at each other. "Excuse me, honored customers, could you please refrain from yelling? You're disturbing the other customers." The patron shot them a stern look. "Omen." Both shinobi said as they glared at each other. "Okay, I am just going to ignore her and enjoy my meal," was what Naruto taught until she sat down in front of him. What the hell are you doing? Sitting down, I can see that, but why the hell here? Because I want to. Naruto frowned as he pointed to his hit I-8. We're enemies, you know. Yeah, I know of the past between Kumo and Konoha, but now it is different. So, you're saying that Kumo and Konoha aren't having a cold war with one another right now? Naruto asked with sarcasm heavy in his tone. No, I mean between us. Us? Yeah, there's no reason for us to fight right now. Besides, I'm on a break, and judging by the fact that the OG-san you were protecting is no longer with you, it seems you are on a break too. No one said we had to hate each other every second of the day. I still don't trust you. And why? You did try to kill me last night. And you're saying you weren't trying to take my life. Naruto was going to say something, but paused as it escaped his mind. Besides, our elders hated each other, and I'm not a fan of the elders of Kumo. Bunch of stuck-up nonsenses that deserve to get with the times or die anyway. It seems we have one thing in common. See, but I still don't trust you. Fine, have it your way. Can't say I don't blame you, though. Suddenly a large explosion was heard, causing the entire restaurant to tremble. Something's happening at the dock, a man yelled from the outside. Naruto glared over at Yugito. What? Swear it has nothing to do with me. Naruto narrowed his eyes and glared at her even harder. Seriously, it doesn't. Arg, Naruto yelled as he got up and took off running for the deck. Shockingly, Yugito took off after him. Why are you following me? Hey. I'm just curious. Whatever. Naruto and Yugito both reached the dock at the same time to witness them being flooded by Iwanin. The Wagaker, Yugito asked as she stepped up. What the hell is up with this guy's luck? He began to scan the port for any sign of Ren. Suddenly he saw him being chased by several Iwanin, which caused him to leap into action. The first thing he did was release the on his kamikaze and went through the same seals he had shown Yugito the previous night. She decided to sit this one out since it had nothing to do with her. Just as Ren was about to meet his death, he was saved by a massive gust of wind that sent all of the Iwanin flying into the ocean. Naruto-san. Naruto landed right in front of him with a large grin on his face. And you know it. Why are you here? Making sure my friend makes it to his boss safely. Arigato, Naruto-san. Naruto switched his katana to the side of the blade and began to slash in the air. Each slash launched violent waves of wind at his opponents, sending several of them crashing to the sea, with their blood leaking over them. More Iwanin seemed to have appeared from nowhere as they all rushed the blonde and his friend. Page Bushin no, Naruto yelled as about 12 clones appeared beside him, but he was the only one with the kamikaze. The reason for this was due to the fact that Naruto had yet to figure out how to recreate the mighty katana. Jiraiya believed it was all due to its rumored blessings from the gods. The 13 of them set off for a massive clash with the Iwanin. Suddenly one of the older ones stopped as the look of fear became evident in his eyes. Yellow Flash, he yelled as he pointed at Naruto, making him smile inwardly. Ever since Jiraiya had told him of his father's feats, he would always enjoy hearing it from others just to confirm the truths. His sensei was known for his tall tales, so it made it hard to believe a lot of things that came from him. Impossible, he's supposed to be dead, another of the Iwanin yelled. Naruto took their pause as a moment to send yet another wave of wind, wiping out several more. That is not the infamous Yellow Flash we all learned about. I am one of the fortunate ones to have survived his onslaught. Take care of the man, and I'll take care of the wannabe. A stout-looking Iwanin said, who bore 2 large scars over his face. As if I'll allow you to do such a thing, Naruto yelled as he gripped the hilt of his blade even tighter. The Iwanin formed a large piece of rock and slung it at Naruto, who slashed it in half with ease. But Naruto had already fallen for the Iwanin traps, as 2 of his clones formed from the rock and sent heavy side kicks to both sides of his chest, at the same time causing him to collapse to the ground. I don't know who you are, but I must admit that you do have an unmistakable resemblance to that demon of a man. Naruto smirked as he coughed up blood. I am his legacy. Nani. Before he could say any more, Naruto began to form a massive amount of swirling chakra in his free hand and punched it in Iwanin's gut. Rasengan, he yelled as he managed to shatter the Iwanin into pieces. Unbeknownst to the other Iwanin, clone after clone unleashed the same on them, giving the same treatment. That is one of his, but too bad that it was nowhere near as strong as his, or I would be dead by now. The man said, as the rocks joined together and formed chains, locking both Naruto's legs and arms to the ground. The real Iwanin appeared in front of him with a large rock first and landed a painful blow to Naruto's face, shattering his jaw. If you really are his son, then I shall exact my revenge by killing you here and now. Meanwhile, Yugito was somewhere in hiding, watching everything as it unfolded. For some unknown reason to her, she felt more than compelled to intervene, but she also knew that this could lead to her own execution by the Raikage if she were to act against an ally in order to save an enemy. And Kami knows how much the Council of Kumo would love to kill her, thanks to the Nico that was sealed within her. Naruto Ran yelled as he pulled out a katana adorned with a similar design as Kamikaze, except with a scarlet hilt from his bag, and slashed through the rocks that had bound Naruto to the ground. Ran, Naruto asked as he glanced up at him. We have to escape, Naruto-san. Where the hell do you think you're going? Young Yellow Flash, the Iwanin demanded as he created a rock barrier in front of them. Apparently, despite his utmost pain, Naruto was able to remain calm enough to continue to control his clones, keeping Ren safe for the time being, but now things were looking more than grim for the two of them. I'm done playing, kid. The wall suddenly shattered, forming many daggers made of rock and flying towards Naruto. Well, they were supposed to. Ren at the last moment had pushed Naruto out of the way and took the brunt of the attack. Before Naruto could even blink, his friend's blood was all over his face. Ren, Naruto howled as tears began to flow out of his eyes. Ooh, now that we have that out of the way, finally I shall deal with you. The Iwanin said as he charged in to finish Naruto off himself. Suddenly, a random kunai punctured into his shoulder, causing him to shout out in agony. He glanced around and saw no one in sight. His pause was enough time to allow Naruto to lose his cool. The Kyuubi within him and the katana that was locked in Ren's hand were pulsating violently. An explosion of chakra erupted from Naruto as his canines began to extend along with his claws. His round cerulean pupils turned into crimson-red slits. His whisker birthmarks grew wider as blood began to flow from them. Naruto's plain tears of water and salt were now tears of crimson red as the unbearable heat of his chakra began to melt away the ground below him. In the distance, Yugito's body was trembling from the demonic yokai his chakra was given out. She had sensed something like this before, but nowhere near as strong, and that was from herself. I knew that boy was different from the others he had in him, just like me. Which one, though? Naruto sheathed his kamikaze and picked up the katana from his late friend's cold dead hands and gripped it in the similar motion he would hold his katana. With one quick swipe, a large wave of liquid fire flooded the deck, burning everything it touched, including all of the Iwanin. Naruto then glared at the sky, as if cursing the gods, and began to scream at the top of his lungs in anguish as the sorrow took hold of his body. Having taken its payment, the malicious chakra began to subside as Naruto collapsed to his knees, his original human-like traits returning. Once again, he looked over at his dead friend and wiped away more of his tears. He fixed his gaze at the katana he now held in his hands and frowned as he stood up. He decided that this katana too would act as a memento of his failure. He had failed to save a friend whom he had promised to protect. This katana would act as a permanent reminder of this day. Not wanting to set him off the handle again, Yugito decided that it was for the best that she left him alone. There was no telling how we would react if we saw her. She too was an enemy of him. Naruto quietly walked off the port and away from the town of Itsumi, as if nothing had happened, but the expression on his face was not one of celebration or excitement. It was actually void of all emotion as he made his silent walk back to the town his sensei was in. That night he set up camp just 3 hours outside of the village. He decided to take to the trees for a quicker way back. When Yugito walked up to him, he didn't say anything, he only looked at her. "You alright?" He narrowed his eyes for a second before glancing up at the sky. "I will be, though." Dear. Yugito handed him a new holster that was the type that was placed on the hip like a samurai, unlike his holster for his kamikaze, which was placed around his back. "What is this for?" "Your new katana. I saw you leave the city with it and I figured you would need one. Better than carrying it in your hand the whole time, you know. Why are you being so nice to me?" "To be honest, I don't even know why, but please take it, okay?" "Arigato." "No, don't thank me." "Are you sure you will be okay?" "Yeah, I will." "So, what are you going to name it?" "What?" "The katana. It seems to be as strong as your other one. You might as well give it a name. I know you gave the other one a name too, right?" "My first katana is called Kamikaze, and this will be called Kagakusai, due to my inability to protect someone who I promised to protect." "Come on, Naruto, this is the cold world of the shinobi. You have to live by the rules of the world, which means that shit happens." "Yeah, I know. Cheer up, okay? Well, I have to head back to my village before they put a hit out on me." "That's important," Naruto said with a blank expression on his face. "No more like they are just looking for reasons to kill me." She smiled, hoping he would react, but he only continued to stare up at the sky. She leaned in and whispered in his ear. "I'm just like you, Naruto. I have it trapped inside me too." That seemed to snap Naruto out of his trance. "Nani?" he let out as he glanced up, but Yugito was nowhere to be found. It was almost as if she had vanished without a trace. Not even a chakra residue was left like normally when someone is off. He began to doubt if she was even there until he remembered the sheath holster she had just given him. It was real indeed. This event began to cause Naruto to rethink his entire 14 years of life. This was the beginning of one of the largest decisions he would make in his entire life. After that night, Naruto reluctantly made his way back to the town where Jiraiya was having the time of his life. Naruto wasn't even in the mood to search for his sensei as he decided to just return to their hotel room. He was very exhausted from his travels and was looking forward to the comfort of the futon that was waiting for him. As soon as his head hit the mattress, he was deep in slumberland. When he woke up the next day, he had no clue how long he had been asleep, but he felt a slight bit of the burden he was carrying gone. He didn't know why this was, but he definitely wasn't going to complain about it. "About time you woke up, kid. Have fun on your trip." Jiraiya was sitting in a chair to the side of the bed, jotting down a couple of things on a pad. "How long was I out?" 3 days. 3 days. "Why didn't you wake me?" "I considered it an extended vacation." A perverted grin split across his face, causing Naruto to sigh. Naruto glanced to the corner of the room where he had placed his clothes and noticed that both of his katana were pulsating wildly. Wild enough that it caused Jiraiya to also glance over there as well. I've been meaning to ask you, but where did you get that katana? It seems to have its own chakra supply like Kamikaze. A memento from Ren. So, how was the man? Did you see him at the port? Naruto looked at him for a second, then back over to the corner. It seems to be like Kamikaze in many ways. I named it Kagakusai because it has a natural fire affinity. Jiraiya quickly noticed how Naruto evaded the question and quickly understood the entire situation. Deciding that if Naruto didn't want to talk about it, then he wasn't going to press the issue. He was surprised the kid wasn't as depressed as he thought he would be. Kakashi, think it could be another one of those artifacts. Positive, but if we go by what we already learned about these artifacts of the past, it should only react to you if you have a seal within you and your affinity matches it. Well, it works for me just like Kamikaze, but it's much more wild and violent. I literally created a wave of fire. Plus, how much do we really know about these artifacts? I never even heard of them until you gave me Kamikaze for my birthday. Jiraiya noticed how mature he was acting about Ren's death and also how intelligent he was sounding for once. True, when did you grow up on me? Naruto gave him a questioning look. Nani? Nothing, vacation's over. Time to get some training in. Naruto rose out of his bed and began to head toward the bathroom. Even though Naruto didn't notice it, that was the beginning of his maturity phase setting in. Over the next year, Jiraiya and Naruto would continue their travels together while researching more information about the artifacts, Akatsuki, and the whereabouts of Orochimaru and Sasuke. In their free time, Jiraiya would further train Naruto in everything he knew. Unlike before, Naruto was soaking up all of the knowledge and learning at an alarming rate. Almost as quick as his father would when he was Jiraiya's student. Also during this time, Naruto began to take on a lot of solo jobs and isolate himself from Jiraiya more and more. It got to the point where he would leave Jiraiya for weeks with only the job details and his possible whereabouts if he needed to contact him. Naruto had learned that allowed him to summon small kitsune that would carry messages between him and Jiraiya when needed. Even though Jiraiya was a little worried about Naruto's well-being, he still figured it was all a part of puberty. He figured that most young teens would become rebellious and want to roam as far from the nest as possible, and he knew Naruto would be no different. Plus, he considered this as mental and terrain training for him. One of the greatest tools a shinobi should have is knowledge of his surroundings, and with Naruto constantly taking on solo missions, he would learn the territories of the many lands surrounding the Land of Fire. A couple of weeks after the one-year anniversary of his first solo mission to Itsumi Port, Naruto decided to take on a job that offered him twice as much than any mission he had done in the past year. Now 15, Naruto had more than a few tricks up his sleeve, plus the mastery of both Namikaze and Kagakusai when using them one at a time, giving him the confidence he needed to take on this job. He learned from past dealings that the higher the pay the more dangerous the job was, and he had a feeling that this one would be a hell of a task. The fact that he didn't get the entire details up front gave him that feeling. He would have to travel to Oka, a large valley city surrounded by mountains on every side. The journey would lead him deep into the land of Earth, which was the reason why Naruto decided to wear a large cloak covering him to hide his appearance. He looked too much like his father, and he didn't want any Iwanin attacking him while he was on this mission. The one accompanying him on his journey was a solemn old man whose job was to find a capable suitor for the job and to bring them to the city. As soon as they reached the canyon that looked over the city, the old man stopped and looked at Naruto. "What is it, Oji-san?" "This is as far as I will take you, Uzumaki-san." "What do you mean? How do you suppose I get down there, and where will I go once I get to the city?" "There will be men waiting for you in the city and they will contact you. I have sent them a description of your appearance. The way down there is for you to decide, Uzumaki-san. This is a part of the test my master set up to see if you truly are suitable to take this job." Naruto glared at the man for a second before sighing. "Fine, if this turns out to be some type of a trap, I will come back for your head." "Got it." The old man remained expressionless as he turned his back to Naruto and began to walk off in the other direction. Naruto only frowned at the man for not taking his threat seriously. He probably thought he wasn't capable of doing either of the things. "There is probably a route or slope I could go on to get down there, but I don't really have the patience to look for one." "Oh, well." With that said, Naruto did something that the old man was not expecting. He literally leaped off the cliff head first. The old man was pretending to not pay attention to the blonde, and when he saw that the teen had jumped off, he rushed to the edge to see. Naruto's body was spiraling down like an arrow that was sent firing toward its target. Suddenly Naruto began to go through a few seals before pulling out a kunai and launching it toward the ground. Quicker than an average blink, Naruto had literally teleported from mid-air to the ground under his feet. The old man nearly fell off the cliff in disbelief. He definitely is suitable for this role. Naruto glanced around, making sure no one saw him before picking up the kunai and placing it in his side pouch. He glanced up just to see how high of a fall it would have been if he had messed up on one of the seals. I really didn't want to use that when I'm still no good at it, and especially in this place of all places. Uzumaki Dono. Who needs to know? Naruto quickly placed his hand in his pouch, slightly gripping the handle of another kunai. No need to be alarmed, Uzumaki Dono, our master is waiting for you. A man appeared with two others behind him. Naruto then remembered that the old man had told him that there would be people down there waiting for him. Did you see how I got down here? No, I didn't. Good. Nani? Don't worry about it. So, where are we heading? To the Capitol building in the center of the city, but the way we will be taking will be the underground route. Underground route? Hi, your client is the lord of the city, and it would lower his reputation greatly if the public saw he was hiring mercenaries for random jobs. I'm not. Hi, we already know you are a training shinobi, Uzumaki Dono, but as long as you are taking random jobs without your village's consent for money, you will also be called a mercenary as well. The man interrupted. Good point, lead the way, Naruto said with a tinge of animosity in his voice and extending the last syllable, clearly asking for a name. There is no need to know our names, Uzumaki Dono. Very well then. The three men led Naruto into a regular store and nodded to the store clerk, who nodded back as the four of them walked into the back room, where there was a hidden door on the floor that led them to the underground tunnels that traveled all below Oka. I see this would make for an excellent escape route in case something were to happen. Naruto said, as the other three continued to ignore him. Naruto sighed out loud as he crossed his arms. Unbeknownst to them, he had a kunai in each hand ready for anything they would throw at him. Despite his attitude, Naruto was on high alert. His attitude was only meant to lure them into thinking that he wasn't expecting anything. The walk took about a good 10 minutes until they reached another stairway that led upward to another hidden room. Behind these doors waiting was his client, the person who would finally tell him what his mission entailed. Upon entering the room, he saw a very familiar blonde kunoichi who was literally gaping at the side of him. What are you doing here? The two yelled as they pointed at each other. So, this is the guy I was waiting for to be my partner. Partner? I work alone, Naruto yelled. Well, it seems you two know each other. That will make this mission that much easier for the two of you. The man who said this was sitting on some kind of throne wearing a white and gray robe. I said I work alone, Naruto yelled as he started to head back downstairs. Don't you dare talk to Yama Inu-sama that way, one of his servants yelled. I will increase your pay by half as much if you agree to work with Nai-san. Yama Inu smirked as Naruto stopped dead in his tracks. Deal. Nani? What about increasing my pay? Yugito argued. You have already failed once. You are lucky I am not canceling our contract. Yugito huffed, crossing her arms as she glared at Naruto, who only ignored her. So, what are the details? You and Nai-san will travel to the shrine within the forest of Yami and retrieve a weapon that was stolen from me. The shrine is heavily guarded, so do not take this job lightly, Uzumaki-san. Sure thing, so when do you want us to head out? Now if possible. Do you need any rest or anything, Uzumaki-san? No, I can leave now if needed. Very well then, I expect that the two of you should be more than enough to handle this job. Don't disappoint me now. A smile crept across his face that made Naruto feel uneasy. Don't I have a say in this? Not really, since my pay is higher than yours, meaning I'm in charge. Naruto said without even looking at her, which really sent her off, but she had no choice but to follow him. At least until they got outside. Yuno-san will escort you two to the outskirts of the forest, where the rest will be up to you. Yuno bowed to Yama Inu as he motioned for the two of them to follow him back down the stairs. Once they got in the tunnels, Yugito began complaining once again. I can't believe this. You should have finished the job the first time, and then you wouldn't have had to see my face again. Eh? You think you're better than me now. How old are you? 16. I'm 15, which means I'm only a year younger, so please stop calling me a hell. I'm even taller than you. Yugito started to say something, but paused as she took notice of his figure. He indeed was taller than her. He had grown since they last met. He was now 6'1" and looked very manly to her. Not to mention that he was quite attractive with the way he was looking at her, which caused her to blush. Nani? She snapped out of her trance and shook her head. Nothing. He is quite handsome. Where is your team like last time? Naruto asked as he glanced at her. Team? Yeah, the guys who attacked me last time. Oh, them? They weren't my teammates. I was just hired by them to help them steal what the man was carrying, since they heard he had hired a bodyguard. Huh? Why were you alone on that? Why were you alone? Training. Sure, well, as I already told you before, the council would rather see me dead than alive, so they send me out on a lot of missions away from the village, and to keep a tab on me, they have an Anbu officer secretly trail me, just in case I don't do anything out of line like defect to another village. Why are you telling me this? Because I figured you could relate to me at all. You're the only person I know who shares the same burden yet has a brain of his own. Huh? You know another one? She glanced toward the wall, not wanting to look at him, hoping he would change the subject. Too late now, you started it and it's not like I'm going to repeat all of this. We can make sure this guy here doesn't. They both turned and looked at Yuno, who was walking in front of them. Kamagakure actually has two. The other one drives me up to the wall with his arrogance towards me just because he has mastered his full potential, which is stronger than the one I have within me. He also has the backing of the village and is not a rogue like me. Those nonsense old men even had the audacity to try to mate us like we were beasts. Of course, I didn't let that happen, which added another strike to my name in their eyes. The thoughts of Yugito mating caused Naruto to do something he normally wouldn't. He began to take a closer look at Yugito's beautiful face, which easily enticed him, causing him to trail off the conversation. "What's wrong with you?" Yugito asked, snapping Naruto out of his own trance as she realized he was staring at her, causing her to blush again. Naruto also turned red as he quickly diverted his attention to the ceilings. At first, Yugito was upset about his perversion, but quickly felt flattered that he actually looked at her like a lady. Something that not many men did due to her having a seal within her, not to mention the fact she could kill them in a second. "What about you?" Yugito said, trying to change the tide. I can't be the only one spilling my guts here, partner. Still too embarrassed to look at her, Naruto looked ahead at Yuno as he began to speak. "Why are they trying to be so friendly with me? We're still supposed to be enemies, you know." "True, but we are partners now, so spill it, or I'll make you spill it," she threatened in a playful tone. Naruto sighed as he decided to tell her a little bit about his misery. "Pictures for the first 13 birthdays of your life were actually the worst days of your life. Nani? My birthday was the very same day that the thing that was sealed within me attacked the village. On the day of my birth both of my parents died, and every birthday after that except the last two I was attacked and nearly left for dead by the villagers. I didn't have it that rough. It's okay, I got used to it and it made me stronger. It's something you shouldn't get used to," Baka Yugito yelled as she grabbed his hand, forcing him to look her in the eyes. The two of them paused for a second as they stared at each other, locked with a deep look. "We're here. These stairs lead up to the forest of Yami." Yuno said, snapping the two of them out of their trance. "Great," Naruto said as he was the first to come back to his senses and head up the stairs. Yugito soon followed after him. As soon as Naruto stepped foot on the surface, he noticed how dark it was. He didn't think they took that long to get to the forest, since when he arrived in the city it was still the morning. He turned around and glanced at Yugito and Yuno, who knew exactly what he was going to ask. "This is why it is called the Forest of Yami. It is always nighttime here for some reason. Some believe it's thanks to a powerful force that one of the guards of the shrine cast." Yugito explained as she walked ahead of him. "I see this is your second time coming through here, right? What happened the first time?" "Let's just say that I underestimated how dangerous this forest really is. Is that all?" "You will see once we go deeper." The two of them turned around and looked at Yuno as he bowed politely before heading back down the stairs and closed the hidden trapdoor behind him. Yugito was about to say something to Naruto when he closed his eyes. "What are you doing?" Suddenly 4 clones appeared in a puff of white smoke. Thanks to Jiraiya's rigorous training and Naruto's determination, he learned how to sun clones without using any seals nor words, which is commonly used as an additional focus. But he was only limited to soning a few, unlike the massive amounts when he used seals. All 5 Narutos glanced at Yugito with the original smiling. "Nani? Just watch." He pointed to the entrance to the forest, ordering the clones to dash into the forest in 4 different directions. "They will act as our scouts. Do you know the exact location of the shrine?" "Yeah, but how will those clones help us?" "I learned a little trick that has helped me greatly. Whatever my clones do, when they disappear I will remember everything, more than help me for training and scouting missions." "Why, aren't you full of surprises?" she joked. "You haven't seen anything yet. Now, please lead the way." A sarcastic smile crept across Yugito's face as she walked into the forest. The shrine is in the center of the forest. After walking around for about 20 minutes, Naruto decided that it would be better to try to get some information on their opponent from his partner. "How skilled are the guards?" "I never made it that far." Suddenly one of Naruto's clones was taken out by something large. What the Naruto started to say, but several trees were pushed down, causing both him and Yugito to have to scramble away. Naruto shot a glance at Yugito, who only shrugged her shoulders. "I told you I never made it to the shrine." "Well, what the hell stopped you from making it?" "That thing," Yugito yelled as she pointed at a large cage that was lurking over them. Naruto quickly turned around and slung 2 shuriken at it, dodging its paw as it slammed against the forest floor. The shuriken bounced off the forehead of the shadow, forcing Naruto to rethink his strategy. "Good job. I don't see you helping me." Naruto finally decided to release the hat that was hiding his 2 katana and unsheathed his kamikaze as he quickly flashed through a couple of seals. "What are you planning? You know a couple of fires, right?" "Yeah, why?" "On my command, I'm going to need you to use your strongest fire." The shadow swiped its paw at Naruto as he was talking to Yugito. He quickly leaped on top of the paw as it landed and did a backflip off of it and landed behind Yugito. The cage began to charge toward them with its mouth wide open. "What the hell are you doing? Use that now." Whatever. Yugito quickly began to run through several sets of seals before stopping on Kaiten. Kiryu, and in her mouth gaped a large ball of fire shot out from it in the form of a massive dragon, charging toward the cage. No. I have already tried this, but you will just have to learn out the hard way. Haze Kajuru, Naruto yelled as he violently swung his katana, creating a wind silhouette of a dragonfly. The wind actually combined with the fire dragon created by Yugito and nearly tripled in size, creating an all-new dragon shape as it literally engulfed the cage without destroying it instantly. Yugito couldn't believe what she was seeing with her own eyes. "Told you, you haven't seen anything yet," Naruto said as he unsheathed his katana. Yeah, whatever." Yugito couldn't help but smile as she began to walk off, trying her best not to show it. "But it wouldn't have worked if it wasn't for that powerful fire you used. Sweet talking me won't get you anywhere, you know," she shot back with a grin on her face. "I'll see about that," he mumbled under his breath. It took the two of them another hour before they reached the shrine. It seemed that after they got rid of the cage, everything else seemed to quiet down. Two of the three clones landed on each side of the shrine and began to investigate the surroundings. Suddenly both clones were taken out quickly. "Looks like we are not out of the woods yet," Naruto said as he pulled out a special kunai and slung it against the wall of the shrine. "What the hell are you doing now?" "Shut up and just hold on to me," Naruto ordered with a little bit of a commanding tone. Yugito started to talk back but decided to just listen to him. He was right before, so there was a chance that he could be right again. She began to blush furiously as she wrapped her arms around his waist. Even though she couldn't see it, Naruto was blushing as well. "This better not be some kind of pervert fantasy you are trying to pull." "Urusai," Naruto growled as he went through a few seals before the two of them teleported to the shrine wall. "What the hell was that? My dad created it. Are you serious? That was crazy." "Yeah, I know. It is hard as hell to do too. He could even do it with multiple kunai at the same time. I think I heard of something like this before, something about a yellow flash. That was my dad." "You mean to tell me that your dad was the—" Yeah. It seemed that over the years Naruto had grown to resent the comparisons between him and his father, unlike before. "Omen, don't worry about it, nah." The two of them slowly crept through the entrance of the shrine with two kunai in each hand. Thanks to Naruto's clone, they already knew that the place was being guarded, but they didn't know where the guards had moved. As soon as they entered the shrine, they saw the item that Yama-Inu had hired them to obtain for him. The weapon turned out to be a scythe with diamonds swirling all the way around the staff. "Well, it is pretty flashy," Yugito said as she stared at it. "Hurry up and grab it so we can get the hell out of here." Yugito began to slowly walk toward the weapon when suddenly two hands grabbed her wrist from out of nowhere and slung her against the wall. Naruto threw both his kunai at the area of his hands. Both kunai landed right between both guards' eyes as they appeared, and both guards crashed to the ground. Naruto jogged towards Yugito and helped her up. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." "Nice throw." Suddenly the two guards rose back to their feet and pulled out the kunai that were lodged in their foreheads. "What the hell? They should be dead," Naruto said as he pulled out two more kunai. Yugito quickly charged in and landed heavy blows to the first guard's chest, sending him crashing back to the floor. The male blonde landed another kunai into the second guard's face and landed two blows of his own to the chest of the guard. The two sun-kissed Jinchuriki leaped backwards as the two guards once again climbed back to their feet. "Why won't they die?" Yugito yelled as she began to go through a couple of seals before yelling Kaiten. Kazangansen Jinkatsu no Jutsu. Both Yugito's hands burst into flames as she charged toward the guards and unleashed a massive barrage of flaming punches upon the guards, literally setting them ablaze. But just like everything else they tried, it was to no avail. "Screw it, just grab the scythe. I'll hold them off," Naruto yelled as he created another clone and began to engage the guards on his own. As Yugito reached for the scythe, the third guard almost stabbed her with a dagger if it wasn't for Naruto stepping in the way, that is. As soon as Naruto was stabbed, his other clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. Once again, Yugito couldn't believe what she was seeing. For a moment, the look of pain on his face froze her on the spot. The blow was fatal, she knew it. "Naruto. Run." Naruto said as he too disappeared in a puff of smoke. "When did he?" she thought out loud for a second before dashing off with the scythe out of the shrine, just to meet Naruto at the entrance with his Kakashi hand. "What are you going to do now?" He motioned her to quickly move to the side as he tightened his grip on the handle of the katana before yelling, "Kaki Kajuru." As he swung it generated a massive wave of fire, taking the shape of a dragonfly into the shrine. The velocity of the attack literally caused the shrine to explode, pushing both of them several yards back. Yugito quickly got up and grabbed Naruto by his neck. "If you ever do that to me again, I will kill you myself," she yelled, causing Naruto to chuckle a little. Sure thing. The trip back to the stairs was a lot quicker due to the fact that they were running all of the way back. They both knew that those immortal guards could still be chasing after them, and they didn't want to take any chances. Because the secret trapdoor that led back to Yama-Inu's office was locked from the inside, Yugito had to show him the way into the town. Luckily for them, Yama-Inu had his man waiting for them, which they were quickly spotted by him as they entered the city and escorted them back to the Yama-Inu's office. Yama Inu was sitting there with a very pleased look on his face as they entered with the scythe in hand. He nodded toward his servant and quickly exited the room. I knew adding Uzumaki-san to the job would get things done properly. Now I am more than happy that I offered you that raise. Arigato for the compliment, but I don't think I could have done it without Yugito. Eh? But you, Naruto held up his hand, stopping her from talking. I also see that you two actually bonded a little. That's good. Now would you hand me my weapon back, Nai-san? Sure thing. Yugito nodded as she handed him the scythe. The slim man stood up and examined the blade before swinging it freely. Nice, but not nice enough. Again, Naruto asked. This one is not the one I needed, but Uzumaki-san, he said as a demented grin crept on his face. Yeah, Naruto inquired about, matching the same tone Yama Inu used. Suddenly, quicker than both of them could blink, Yama Inu was in Naruto's face already in swinging motion with the scythe. Yugito was barely quick enough to kick Naruto out of the way. What the hell are you doing? Yugito yelled as she pulled out a kunai and entered a defensive stance. What am I doing, you ask? Well, before he finished his sentence, he appeared behind Yugito and kicked her in the back, sending her crashing onto the floor. You see, Uzumaki-san has two items that also belong to me as well, and I plan on taking them as well. Let me guess, the scythe wasn't originally yours anyway, and when you grabbed it, you learned that it didn't work for you. But how did you know about my katana? You guys remember my pet, right? Pet, Yugito asked as she stood up. The cage no Kami. That was you, Yugito yelled. I needed to test you two to see if you really could get the scythe, and I'm happy to say you guys passed with flying colors. And as an added bonus for me, I learned that Uzumaki-san just happened to carry not one artifact but two. I knew this was an excellent idea. Well, I have bad news for you, Yama Inu. These won't work for you either. There is a secret needed to unlock the power. Oh, really? Something like having a seal with you? Oh, don't try to play dumb with me. I know both of you have a seal within you. Kyuubi and Nekomata. Yugito's eyes nearly popped out of her head. What's sealed within you, Naruto? Yeah, what about it? Yubaka. Kyuubi no Yauko was the strongest of the 9. Your point? Indeed, but I also know both of you are still inexperienced with using the Bijuu's powers, unlike me, who has already taken full control over mine. Nani, both Naruto and Yugito said as they glared at him. Hi, I am Gobi no Haku, he yelled as his chakra began to flare out of control, as his human traits were beginning to be replaced by traits. Yama Inu's chakra began to push both Yugito and Naruto back against the wall. Yama Inu raised one hand and created a massive wave of wind that literally destroyed the office, pushing them into an auditorium. He has a wind affinity too, Naruto asked as he released a hat that was hiding his katana. He unsheathed Kugakusai and sent a wave of fire crashing towards Yama Inu. You wish it was only that, Yama Inu yelled as he created a large wall of water, negating Naruto's attack. Unlike all the others, Haku was the only one who had control over the 4 major elements. He was the 3rd strongest of all, and I will be more than strong enough to take you two out, since you can't even grasp the potential you hold. Well, I have everything maxed out. Naruto began to leap backwards with Kugakusai still in his hand. He began to glance around for Yugito, but she was nowhere in sight. He needed to find her so they could devise some sort of plan together, but when he found her, she was too far from him to say anything. Yugito had used her speed to get behind Yama Inu and tried to stab a kunai in his back, but he had already sensed her coming. He quickly backhanded her, sending her to the ground, and tried to slice her in half with the scythe. Naruto quickly appeared in between them using his katana to fend off Yama Inu's attack. The younger male pushed back on Yama Inu, causing him to tilt backwards, while Yugito took this time to drop and kick him to the ground. Naruto took advantage of his position and tried to stab him with his katana. But before he could land the final blow, Yama Inu caused rocks to burst through the floor and collide with Naruto's body, sending him crashing into the other fair-haired ninja. That hurt. Yugito groaned as she pushed Naruto off of her. Yama Inu leaped back on his feet and continued his attack. I figured I will just kill you two now before I have to deal with a powerful Nekomata, and not to mention that damned Kyuubi. I already have my hands full with Yamada no Orochi. Well, it's nice to know that you like us so much and all, but I don't plan on dying here today. Kaiten. Kazangansen Shintai no Jutsu, Yugito yelled as her entire body burst into flames, and her speed nearly tripled. Now let's play, shall we? In the blink of an eye, she was in front of Yama Inu, unloading a massive combo of punches and kicks that carried the added effects of fire with each blow. Each attack shook every fiber within Yama Inu's body, but it still wasn't enough as Yama Inu's body vanished in a puff of smoke. As soon as Yugito caught on to his original chakra signature, he was already behind her swinging his scythe. At the last second, Naruto leapt in front of the blow. Yugito was forced to watch as the blade of the scythe ripped into the flesh of her protector's chest, causing blood to splatter all over herself. Naruto, using the last of his strength, grabbed the scythe from Yama Inu and pulled it away from him. Naruto. Didn't I tell you if you did this to me again I would kill you, right? Yama Inu tried to rip the scythe out of Naruto, but Yugito, still in her flaming state, landed a couple of real blows, sending him crashing against the ground. Yugito then cancelled her and grabbed Naruto. Naruto? This is a clone, right? He looked up at her with a smirk on his face. At first she started to believe that it really was, but her relief became terror when she saw his eyes glaze over with the same expression on his face. Naruto. 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 Good one down and a Nibi to go. Shut up, Yugito yelled as she felt the Nekomata's chakra take a hold of her. Just like Naruto and Yama Inu, she began to take on her Bijuru's animalistic features. This might be fun after all. To see you unleash all of your abilities and launch them at me. The problem is you still won't be enough to handle me. You are merely lower than me on the totem pole. Yama Inu grinned as he stood up. But right before she lost herself to the power, she felt the pulsating chakra of another unfamiliar source. She knew it wasn't Naruto or Yama Inu, but it felt so close to her. She glanced down at the scythe and watched it pulsate uncontrollably, as if it was demanding her to grab it. She picked up the scythe and gently began to pull it out of Naruto until she felt the weapon begin to draw power from her chakra and began to glow. Every fiber of her being wanted Naruto to return to her. It was with this sentiment that she felt a pull from the weapon. Not knowing what was going on, she decided to give in to the scythe's command and watched as Naruto's body also began to glow as well until life returned to his eyes. Nani? How long was I out? How could this be? I thought you were dead, Yugito said as she dropped to her knees and hugged the returning life out of the boy. It seems that this artifact is the artifact of death. Should have known that cursed Nekomata would come back to haunt me. Naruto weakly glanced over at Yama Inu, who was glaring at the two of them. You sound like you are the Gobi no Haku. Naruto said as he tried to move. Kyuubi had already begun to heal his wounds and he slowly felt his life return to him. And that's because I am him. Unlike the Kyuubi and the Nekomata, I have full control over my. Yama Inu said as his dog-like eyes began to glow with a grey aura. What do you know of the artifacts? Naruto asked. More than you apparently. But one word of advice for the two of you. Don't go trying to revive every person that died on you. Uzumaki-san is a special case since the Kyuubi has the uncanny ability to keep him on the border between life and death much longer than anybody. Even though he was dead, with the help of the Kyuubi you were able to revive him, but I don't think it will work on everyone, and it may not work again in the future. Why are you telling us this? Yugito asked. You two have sparked my interest, so I decided to give you two gifts and a warning for you, Uzumaki-san. That was the first gift. Warning. The Nekomata in the past teamed up with me to kill the Kyuubi, but we both failed. The Nekomata could be hungry for revenge just like I am. What are you talking about? Yugito asked. You two may find out. What is the second gift? Naruto asked. Yama Inu smirked as he began to fade away. Freedom for today, that is, and with that, Yama Inu had completely disappeared from their sight. It wasn't for a few minutes until they felt safe once again. Naruto looked up at Yugito and smiled. Arigato. Yugito smiled back before punching him right in the face. What the hell was that for? He yelled, placing a hand on the sore spot. That was for dying on me, she smirked before pulling him closer to her and stealing his cheek. At first he tried to fight it off, flailing his arms, but he quickly gave in to her as he began to return the kiss to her cheek. And don't you ever leave me again, she bellowed as she pulled back, allowing a few tears to roll down her cheeks. Naruto didn't know what to say about all of this. This was the first time anyone had ever kissed him or showed this type of affection towards him. He was so used to having a one-sided relationship with Sakura that he never imagined that someone would ever have feelings for him. During that time he forgot all about everything that had plagued him in the past. He was already beginning to feel that everything he was doing was for someone else and not for himself. This was the first time he was going to put himself first. No longer was he going to miss everything around him just because he was too busy looking at what's in front of him. Don't worry, I won't. And just as he said that, Yugito seemed to remember the little problem of their two villages hating each other. Naruto somehow instantly deduced what she was thinking. Don't worry about that either, too. Jiraiya was finally returning from his latest adventure in perversion when he saw that the light was on in the hotel room that Naruto and he shared through the cracks of the door. He opened the door with a large grin on his face, obviously thinking the blonde was about the room. So how much did you make this time? Think you can lend me some for two? Before Jiraiya finished his sentence, he stumbled across a dead body laying on the middle of the floor. As he took a closer look, he noticed that it was an Anbu office from Kumagakure, and to the side of him were two Hittite. One from Konoha and the other from Kumo. Jiraiya knew exactly what that meant and sighed out loud. Tsunade is going to kill me. In the Hokage Tower, another blonde was having a major craving for a little bit of sake, thanks to the amount of paperwork she had just finished going through. And thanks to the fact that her ever-diligent protege was not by her side like always. She decided that now would be the perfect time to get herself a drink. That is until she felt the obnoxious presence of one very annoying hentai excuse of a man. You're not getting any. She said after signing to herself. Oh, you don't have to be so mean, Tsunade Haim. You're back a year early. About that, did anything happen? Where's Naruto? You might want to take a couple of drinks before we begin talking about such trivial things. Her right eye only twitches as she gave Jiraiya a look that made him wish he was dead, a request that might have been answered when she found out about Naruto. Jiraiya took a seat in front of Tsunade on the other side of the desk and braced himself for anything she was going to throw at him, including the desk itself. I don't really know where this is. Nani? Did the Akatsuki catch him? How could you have let him out of your sight? Jiraiya quickly leapt up as she literally picked up the desk and started to throw it at him. Wait. I'm sure they haven't caught him and I'm positive that he is alive. He ran away with a shinobi from Kumagakure. She paused for a moment before deciding to throw the desk at him anyway. For some reason Jiraiya felt helpless as the desk collided with his unprotected head, sending him crashing into the wall. Several Anbu officers along with Shizune rushed into the office to see what all the loud commotion was about. Tsunade-sama. Is everything al? Jiraiya-sama. Shizune quickly rushed over to Jiraiya and began to heal his bloody head wound. What do you mean he left with a Kumo-nin? If you knew this, then why in hell did you not go get him? I tried over the years to get pretty good at hiding his chakra and stealth. You'd be surprised how good he actually got over the 2 years. I don't care about that. Why in hell did you come back here without Naruto? Naruto's missing? Shizune asked as panic became evident on her face. I came back to request some help in the matter. I'm pretty sure Kakashi and his hounds could track down Naruto easily. So, I came back to get him as long as you allowed it. Kakashi was assigned to another mission already. When will he be back? He left 2 days ago and won't return till sometime next week. Which way did he go? I can still catch up with. Suddenly, they all heard a soft tap at the window of the Hokage office. All of them turned around as a golden kitsune leaped through the. I have a message from Naruto-sama. It is for Bachan, Hirosenin, and Shizune Nichan. It yipped in a high-pitched voice. I see he still hasn't matured, much. Tsunade said as she rolled her eyes trying to quell her anger. The fox cleared its throat twice, much to the surprise of the spectators, and perfectly imitated Naruto's voice. Don't bother looking for me. It was my idea to leave in the first place. So, don't worry, I'm not captured or being forced to say this. I decided that my life would be better if I actually parted ways with Konoha for a little while. I may return or I may not, so I will not make any promises in this regard. The main reason why I am doing this is because I think it is about time I start thinking more about myself than others. I know this may sound selfish and all, but for the majority of my life, I have been either blamed for something that wasn't my fault or forced to live for others, just to prove to everyone of my existence as a capable shinobi, and not the Kyuubi no Yauko. I really wished I was there to tell you all this in person, but I'm sure you guys would literally force me to stay. Oh, I almost forgot the most important thing. The Kunoichi from Kumagakure is my companion, so don't get any ideas that she kidnapped me or something like that. Jana. What the hell is this? The blonde asked, eyeing the dark yellow creature, which in turn turned its gaze at her. This is one of the Gaki's sons. He formed a contract with the Kyuubi to gain control over the demonic kitsune. Jiraiya said, as he tried to think up his next move. Hey, where is Naruto now? Tell me, Tsunade demanded in a manner that sent a chill up the spine of every shinobi in the room, including Jiraiya. The kitsune only smirked, completely unaffected, before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Damn kitsune. Jiraiya, I'm going to give you the details on the Kakashi mission. As soon as he is finished, you two will begin the search for Naruto. When you find him, make sure you leave him alive so I can kill him myself. Tsunade reached into one of her file cabinets and pulled out a scroll and handed it to Jiraiya. Jiraiya only nodded before leaping out of the broken window. Sakura was walking about this time when she saw Jiraiya leap out of the Hokage office's window and quickly rushed up to the office. Ashushu-sama. Did Naruto come back early? Is he alright? Tsunade slightly glanced at Sakura from the corner of her eye before turning her back to her. Shizune walked up to Sakura and gently escorted her out of the office. Naruto deserted the village, he might not come back, Shizune said with a sad look in her eyes. Nani? Too. Even with the added help of Kakashi and his shinobi hounds, the two of them couldn't find even the smallest trace of Naruto and Yugito. Even if Naruto's skills in stealth had increased immensely, it still shouldn't have been enough to evade the hunt, according to Jiraiya. But the important factor that he didn't know about was Yugito's skills. She had been trained in these types of situations since she was young, which let them remain well hidden not only from Konoha, but all of the people who would have a reason to come after them. Even though Jiraiya and Kakashi didn't have any luck finding Naruto after searching for about 2 months, the overall search for Naruto began when the councils of both Konohagakure and Kumagakure caught wind of Naruto and Yugito's desertion. At first, the two villages cooperated with each other, using a very uncommon temporary peace treaty, until old blood began to boil as tempers began to rise, like everyone predicted. Over the years, the tension between the two villages was similar to a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. In the 5th year of Naruto and Yugito absence, the tension between the two villages was at an all-time high. War was evident, which would give Iwagakure a reason to attack as well, which would force Sunagakure to act. Things began to feel more and more like the Fourth Shinobi War was around the nearest corner. 3. For some unknown reason, over 10 camps in the outskirts of Konoha that were rumored to be bandit camps were raided over the past 2 weeks. There were no survivors recorded. Only the remnants of the scuffle and the smell of burned flesh were left. The Hokage normally would have ignored this incident if it wasn't for the fact that all of this was happening so close to home, not to mention the fact that the Kazekage was also visiting Konoha at this time, along with the upcoming Chunin exams. Several shinobi were sent out to investigate the last campsite that was attacked. Konoha needed to know that these attacks pose no threat to Konoha and Suna. "Taichu, are you sure this is the place?" one of the Anbu officers said as he glanced around the campsite. "Yeah, what's wrong?" Taichu asked over the headset they were using to communicate. They had decided to split into 2 different groups, a scout group that was to head to the campground first and survey the land, while the secondary team's main job was to act as backup, just in case there was an ambush waiting for them. "There's nothing here. Everything looks backed up." Kainu come in. The Taichu paused for a second hoping there would be a reply, but static was the only thing that was heard after that. "Everyone move out," the leader yelled as the entire squad quickly dashed onto the scene to see several of their own teammates on the ground. The first thing the Taichu did was check to see if they were still alive, while the other 3 were on lookout. Thankfully, all of them were still alive and only were unconscious, nothing life-threatening. "I see your employer has finally decided to step up the game a little bit and hired some shinobi." A voice was heard over the far distance of the trees. All of the shinobi went into a defensive stance as the Taichu stood up. "What are you talking about?" Taichu asked. Silence only followed as the wind began to gently blow past them. Suddenly 2 of the shinobi dropped to the ground as they felt the heavy blow of a punch in their stomach. The Taichu felt something fly past her cheek. Quickly turning around to see what landed, she was surprised to see a dark blur appear in front of her before receiving similar treatment as the other 2. The last shinobi was locked in a state of confusion as he frantically searched his surroundings for the assailant. This was his first mission as an Anbu officer, and he still was a little green under the ears. He felt a slight tense of chakra and quickly turned around but fell right into the Rouge's trap as he felt a kunai press against his neck. "So which one of you is in charge?" "I am the Anbu captain," said as she slowly rose to her feet. She finally got a good look at what the rogue looked like. He was wearing a dark blue trench coat with black gloves and a black turban covering his head, leaving only his dull blue eyes in sight. "Since I couldn't get anything out of those bandits earlier, I'm going to ask you this once. Why is Yama Inu sending his men this close to Konoha without showing himself? What has that been planned for?" "I don't know what you're talking about. That's not the answer I was looking for," the rogue said as he started to slit the shinobi's throat. "Wait. We are Konoha shinobi. If you take the life of one of our ranks, you will ask Konoha to declare war on you. I have been on the run for years. Why would I care if a village who has already been after me declares war on me?" How long have you been on the run?" "Would it be about 5 years?" Something about those brilliant blue eyes of his called to her. "Why are you asking this?" Taichu pulled off her mask revealing her long pink dazzling hair and her emerald orbs. The rogue was clearly taken aback by this. "You're Naruto, aren't you?" Sakura asked as she stared at the rogue before he released the shinobi and unwrapped the turban that was covering his head, revealing a head of messy blonde hair, similar to the style of the yondaime. "You're," Sakura yelled as she ran up to her former teammate and gave him a bone-crushing hug that almost killed him. As Naruto tried to break free of Sakura's grip, he noticed that her godly strength wasn't the only thing she acquired from the Bachan. "You're killing me, Sakura-chan," Naruto said as he fought for his breath. She released him from her death grip and smiled before landing a heavy right hook to his chin, sending him literally soaring into the air. He snapped out of the trance and slung a kunai down at her feet and teleported right beside her with a second kunai aimed at her neck. "What the hell was that for?" "That was for leaving without saying goodbye, Yubaka," Sakura yelled as she tried to restrain the tears that were fighting to be released. "Do you understand how worried I was? Don't apologize for your stupidity, Yubaka," she yelled again as she glared at him. He stepped back a little bit before Sakura grabbed him once again in her death lock of a hug, this time shaking uncontrollable as the tears began to flow down her cheeks. "How's Bachan? Is she still a Hokage?" Sakura released Naruto and wiped her eyes. "No, she stepped down about 2 years after you disappeared," appointing Kakashi as the Rakudame. "Eh? Kakashi-sensei. Wow." A couple of people were disappointed that it wasn't you who took over the position, since Kashuishu-sama was only holding it for you. Sakura said as Naruto held his head down, showing a little bit of his regret for making the decision that he made. He quickly smiled as his cerulean orbs literally lit up as he thought of something. "And wait until you meet them. Them? My pride and joy." The streets of Konohagakure were more than busy thanks to the return of the Chunin exams, and not to mention the arrival of the Kazekage from Sunagakure. Some people still had the bitter taste in their mouth from the last Chunin exam, when both Sun and Oda launched a full-on attack killing many, including the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. So not only were the streets busy with fresh faces, market stands and villagers, there were also Konoha shinobi on guard everywhere you went. Despite this though, the village still felt like it was about to throw the festival of the year. One tiny little girl with long blonde hair that reached to the back of her calves, sparkling blue and green eyes and wearing a dark blue dress, walked into the Ichiraku's with a large grin on her face. She looked like she was about 4 or 5 years old, and it would have been the cutest thing you ever saw if you watched her try to climb up on one of the stools by herself. Aji-san. Yumehime wants one bowl of miso ramen, please. My, aren't you the cute one? Where are your parents? Am said with a large smile on her face. Yumehime's mama and papa are busy. She answered in a really cute voice. Tucci appeared by his daughter with a hot bowl of ramen and placed in on the bar with a pair of chopsticks. Be careful little one, it's hot. Yumehime will be fine. She said with a smile on her face before saying grace and digging it. Before Tucci could get back in the kitchen she was already finished. Oji-san. Yumehime wants one more, the young lad shouted. Tucci glanced at the little girl and couldn't help but think about one Uzumaki Naruto. She reminded him so much of the urchin-haired blonde that it made him miss his #1 customer. If you keep eating like that, you'll grow up to be fat. A teenage boy said as he finished off his own bowl of ramen. The ramen vendor's daughter sent him a slaying stare. No. Yumehime won't get fat. Yumehime's papa eat lot of ramen and he not fat. Maybe not in your eyes since you're still little. Yumehime's papa is strongest in the world, she yelled as she slammed money on the counter. Oh, don't worry about paying. These bowls were on me. Am said as she winked at the little girl. Arigato, one-chan, Yumehime said before she bowed politely and ran out of the shop. Am then shot the evilest glare at the teenager that caused his heart to stop for an instant. Why did you have to pick on her, Konohamaru? For that, you are paying for her 2 bowls. But Ni-chan, if you ever want to eat here again, then you better do as I said. She said as her glare intensified to impossible levels, leaving Konohamaru with only one solution. Shrieking. To say Konohamaru was a little upset about him having to pay the little gaki's bill was an understatement. Of course, he didn't make it known until after he left the shop. Even though he had matured from his younger days, he still enjoyed playing pranks like his Ani-san, Naruto. So his new goal was to find that little girl and make her pay for emptying the last of his wallet. Out of the blue, it began to rain, and he futilely covered his head with the scarf he normally wore wrapped around his neck. Strange, it didn't look like it was going to rain at all today. After walking for a few more steps, he noticed that he was the only one getting wet. He stopped for a second and glanced around him to make sure he just wasn't seeing things. All of a sudden, he was splashed with a large amount of water, almost as if somebody had just poured a bucket's worth over his head. He turned around to see Yumehime pointing and laughing hysterically as she was literally rolling on the ground, and now empty bucket flailing with her movements. Why you? Before he could finish his sentence, the little girl saw 2 females that looked like Kinoichi and ran behind the older one and latched onto her leg. Save him, one-chan, she asked, acting as if she were terrified for her life. Save, the woman asked before looking up at a very pissed off Konohamaru. He was going to continue his pursuit until he took notice of just whom he was hiding behind. Hinata-san and Hanabi-chan. Why are you teasing this little girl? Konohamaru-san, Hinata said with a stern look on her face. You got it all wrong, I wasn't, and I thought you were more mature than the childish baka you used to be. You were even trying to blame it on her. Hanabi scolded. Papa, Yumehime shouted as she rushed over to a tall man with long wild blonde hair, cerulean blue eyes, and strange but very attractive whisker birthmarks on his cheeks. And Naruto-kun, Hinata asked as she glanced up at the very handsome man as he picked up his daughter. Appa. Then the strongest person in the world she mentioned earlier was Ani-san, Konohamaru said as his skin went pale. Hanabi knew of her sister's huge crush on Naruto, which refused to go away even long after he left. She had tried dating others, but there was no one that could compare to her Naruto-kun. So, Hanabi glanced over at Hinata, trying to judge the reaction on her face to see if she needed to step in at any time. But to her surprise, what she saw was not despair or sadness but happiness. Her sister was genuinely happy to see that Naruto was alright. Happy to see you again, Naruto-kun. Hinata said with a large smile on her face. Arigato, Hinata-chan, Naruto replied, matching her smile. Papa, what is Yumi-chan? He was mean to Yumehime. She pointed toward Konohamaru, who was hiding this whole time, hoping that she wouldn't do what she just did. Oh, really? He grinned darkly. His unofficial younger brother began sweating bullets. Quicker than they all could blink, Naruto was behind them with his free hand on top of Konohamaru's head. He then balled his hand into a fist and acted like he was going to punch him in the head before switching up into a pain. Oh, next time you mess with my Yumi-chan, I'll kill you. Naruto said, a sadistic smile on his face causing Konohamaru to fear for his life. Naruto then looked up at Yumehime and smiled genuinely. Where's mama? Up there. Yumehime pointed to the top of a building where Yugito was glaring at one of the Kunoichi near the father-daughter pair. Naruto sighed out loud because he knew exactly what that meant. Yumehime thinks mama is mad. Yeah, me too. Yugito leaped down and slowly walked up to them with a look that could kill. She was wearing a similar attire to Naruto. When are we leaving? Yugito asked, not to look at Naruto even once. Her eyes were dead set on Hinata wanting her to do something. Soon, there are still some people I need to see before we go. Yumehime don't want to leave yet, mama. Well, I do, Yumi-chan, Yugito said before Naruto wrapped his free arm around Yugito. Come on, don't be that way, Yu-chan. Naruto gave Yugito such a puppy dog look, it almost made her give in. That was until Yumehime joined in matching her father's look. Yugito couldn't help but to give in as a large smile made its way across her face. Fine, you guys are going to pay for using that on me, again. She said as she turned her back to them. Naruto and Yumehime both laughed. Where are guys heading first? Hinata asked, completely oblivious to the older blonde's intentions. To see an old sensei of mine. I'm sure he'll be happy to see you. Yugito glared at Hinata as the three of them left heading towards the Hokage Tower. Yumehime really likes them. The current cage of both Konoha and Suna were in the middle of a very serious meeting. War at any moment could break out, and the Chunin exam could be used as an opening for Kumo and Iwa to attack, just like Orochimaru did over 7 years ago. Suna was also in a tight spot thanks to their shinobi count being at an all-time low. Despite the amount of effort both villages had put forth on rebuilding, both were still in a very weakened position. Unlike before, where the Yondaime turned the tide of the war single-handedly, there was no one on their side who could do this again. Even if the Kazekage was known for his power alone wasn't on par with the Yondaime of the past, nor was it enough to match the rumored powerhouses of Iwa and Kumo combined. Kakashi was almost at a point where he would cancel the exams due to these disadvantages. Even if it showed a major sign of weakness, Kakashi felt that this would grant both villages enough time to strengthen their defenses. Things were looking grim indeed for Konoha and Kumo. What of Akatsuki's movement? Ever since the disappearance of Naruto-san and the Jinchuriki from Kumo, all information on them has been completely silent. It seems that they have moved their plans towards something else, something just as deadly as that. We still have nothing on what it is, though. The Kazekage said. Something else? Kakashi asked. Apparently there is a rumor of some ancient artifacts that hold enough power to equal the maximum capability. And there may be one around this village and the genin that are coming here for the genin exams, maybe them in disguise coming after the one hidden here. How long has this been known? Long enough for you guys to only learn about it now. Naruto said as he appeared in the Hokage office, surprising both letters out of their skin at the sudden interruption. Naruto, Kakashi said as he stood up. Long time no see, Kakashi-sensei. You still call me sensei after all of these years? Force of habit. Naruto started with his patented smirk on his face. It has been a while, Naruto-san. The Kazekage said as he stood up and walked toward Naruto. Ara. When do you become a while ago? How have you been? He inquired, a ghost of a smile over his features. Well, I'm married with a daughter now. Both Gaara and Kakashi burst into a fit of laughter until Yugito and Yumehime walked in, effectively shutting them up. Oh, this is my family. He informed them, lazily extending his hand in the direction of both females. The two Kage stopped and stared at them for a second, making sure this wasn't a trick. You're serious? Kakashi asked the trio. Naruto only nodded. Congratulations. Kakashi managed to compose himself enough to say that before taking a seat to try getting a better grasp of the situation. He never imagined that Naruto would ever mature enough to have a family. Why have you chosen now to show yourself since you and Yugito-san are in the bingo books of both Konoha, Iwa, and Kumo? Gaara asked suddenly, a stern look marred his face. Clearly he had mulled over the chance of the two eloping. How do you know my name? Yugito replied, clearly not expecting him to know her. Trust me, Yugito-san, I know more about you than you would like to know, though the fact that you were a mother is all news to me. Gaara said as Yugito glared at him. Right about now she was finding it hard to trust the Kazekage. Despite Naruto's idea, she didn't really want to come into the village. She knew that things would be too dangerous if they were forced to fight while protecting Orihime at the same time. Naruto's only argument in regards to her feelings was that he knew some people he could trust Yumehime's life with if something did happen. We're only here to visit, and then we will be leaving once again. Papa, Yumi-chan, he said in a finalizing tone. The little girl resigned. By the way, what were you two talking about before I rudely interrupted? Both Kage gave him a questioning look as Naruto smirked. They both instantly knew that he knew the contents of their conversion and began to wonder how long he was actually there before he said something. How much do you know about the artifacts of Naruto? Jiraiya already told me that you have two in your possession, and there is reason to believe that your wife has one as well. Kakashi said in a serious tone. Naruto's smirk grew wider in a dangerous way as he stared at him. It all depends on how much you know about them yourself. The subject is very sensitive to my ears after all. So what you are saying is that we have to tell you what we know before you tell us? Gaara surmised with a cold expression on his face. Instantly the vibe in the room switched from a warm feeling to a very tense one. So tense that even Yumehime could feel it as she hid behind her mother for protection. "Why are you really here?" Naruto Kakashi asked as he stood up. "Calm down, gentlemen, we do have my daughter here as well. Plus, you should really think about your own situation here. Right now, you don't know if I could be your ally or an enemy. It is not wise to make that decision for me in your position." The look on Naruto's face was enough to let them know that he was more than serious. "You really have changed a lot." Naruto. The blonde just chuckled a little in response. "Having a kid does that to you. Maybe you should stop reading that perverted book series of yours and have a family as well." "Well then, we should be departing now, since I still have to meet another very important blonde who I know wants to kill me." Yugito picked Orihime as she walked out of the door. Naruto started to walk out as well but paused for a second. "Oh, almost forgot, if you hear anything about an artifact nearby, it would be a very wise decision to ignore it. You never know what type of trouble you could get yourself in." Naruto said with a grin on his face before closing the door. The two were silent for a second before glancing at each other. "Think it's wise to let him roam freely like this?" Gaara asked. "I don't think so, but these artifacts may be even more important than we originally thought they were if he was willing to bare his fangs at us. This might become a pain if we don't play a hand as well. I will have someone watch him." Gaara said, looking hard at the closed door Naruto and his family had just used. "Very well then, just as long as it doesn't put anyone from Konoha in danger in the process. I never knew Naruto to bluff, which means he could be stronger than us for all we know. But a true shinobi never shows his cards up front. He could have learned how to be an excellent card player over the years." Gaara finalized. Meanwhile, the Uzumaki family was making their way to the edge of Konoha, where a lot of the wealthier families lived, including the Hyuga compound. Yumehime was fast asleep in her mother's arms, tired from the excitement of the day. Earlier that day, Naruto had learned the location of Tsunade's new house from Sakura and was kind of dreading their visit. He was sure the woman who was like a mother to him would literally kill him. Besides Amudi Yugito on her period, she was the only person he feared. "Why did you threaten them like that?" Yugito asked, breaking the silence. "Didn't really threaten them, I just sort of let them know politely that this case wasn't something they should be sticking their nose in. You think Yama-Inu will make a move during the exams? If not him, they will for sure. I still get an uneasy feeling when I think about them. I understand, but this is something we will have to deal with sooner or later, unless Konoha can stop them, and I doubt Konoha has it to do this thanks to the Cold War right now, I suppose." As they passed by the Hyuga compound, Naruto and Yugito sensed someone watching them, and he secretly created a cage bunshin, without causing his chakra to spike even a little. Only Yugito noticed it as she glanced over at Naruto. "Who do you think it is?" "Probably a Hyuga, just making sure we don't evade the compound. Everyone does seem to be on edge here." "I don't blame them though." "Then why did you do that? You're not the only one who doesn't trust the village, you know. I am pretty sure the council knows about our arrival already." "No, I'm asking why did you do that just now?" "Oh, I guess it just escaped my mind." Naruto said as he smiled and scratched the back of his head. Yugito only frowned as she bopped him on the top of his head. The three of them made it to Tsunade's house shortly after that and knocked on the door. Instead of seeing Amada Shizune opening the door, he saw Tsunade herself open the door and crossed her arms with a glare firmly fixed on the male fair-haired. Sakura and Shizune stood behind her with huge smiles on their faces, though Shizune's had a tinge of anger in her eyes, mainly from the main reasons her master had. How's it going, Bachan?" Naruto said in a nervous tone, raising a weary shaking hand as a salute. Tsunade balled her hand into a fist as he glared even harder as she suddenly charged toward Naruto. He was so terrified, he froze up while Yugito wisely moved out of the way. Instead of the beat up of a lifetime, he got a very firm embrace as his shoulder became very dampened with her tears. "The menace I Bachan," Naruto said as he hugged her back. She rose up with a smile on her face as he wiped away her tears. She suddenly landed the hardest punch he had ever felt in his entire existence, sending him several meters into the air. Unlike earlier, the blow was so hard that his body did not respond as quickly, which resulted in him landing flat on his head. For a second even Yugito was afraid, and Yumehime woke up from the loud sound that Naruto made as he collided with the ground. Analyzing the current situation, she spoke. "Is Papa okay?" "He will be, maybe," she spoke, shooting a scared look at the Sannin, her mind seriously considering the idea of running for it. "That was for leaving me without a proper goodbye or reason. Now, come in so I can heal you, and we can catch up on the last 5 years of your life." Tsunade said as she walked back into the house, leaving everybody watching literally speechless at her mood swings. The atmosphere in the room was unbelievably thick and tense. It almost felt like a conference meeting between two rival government leaders as they tried to settle their obvious differences. Yumehime seemed to be the only one oblivious to what was going on as she enjoyed a nice nap in her father's lap. Yugito was trying her hardest not to get up and leave as Naruto was literally sweating bullets. Even Sakura and Shizune were on edge, and they were the ones who had spent the most time with the woman. "So the buxom blonde asked impatiently. So Naruto tried to understand what she was asking. Tsunade narrowed her eyes in the distinct way that caused Naruto to instantly remember all the painful beatings he had received from her in the past. "What the hell were you thinking?" Tsunade yelled as her honey pupils were replaced with flames, making Naruto feel awfully sick. He decided that this was the best thing to do, since not many people here appreciated how great he was. Yugito answered for him, leaving Naruto feeling even sicker. He was more than grateful to the fact that Yumehime was asleep right now and not awake to witness the person she considered the strongest in the universe squirm like a little worm. "I didn't ask you." Tsunade shot Yugito a look that sent everyone in the room chills up and down their spine. Everyone except Yugito and Yumehime for obvious reasons, of course. "You didn't need to, since he is my husband. I hold the right to answer any question that I have a part in." Yugito was obviously not going to back down an inch, which all three of the other adults thought was an amazing feat or an act of ignorance. "I see you kind of have a point there, but that answer isn't acceptable. Not to mention the fact that I still haven't approved of this marriage of yours. Naruto is now a Nukenin and has a high bounty in the bingo book, yet this is the only excuse you can give me for this reason." Now everyone was surprised that she was being somewhat agreeable in this situation. Naruto began to realize just how similar those two were. Well, he always had a thing for overbearing and strong women. "I just needed to get away from everything." Naruto said, finally speaking up for himself. "What do you mean?" Sakura asked, as she was under the impression the whole time that he had been coerced to abandon the village by the Kumo Kunoichi, despite what she was told. The Naruto she knew wouldn't break him regardless of the situation or the circumstances. "I came to the realization that I wasn't living my life for myself. Everything, including my goal of becoming the Hokage, was based on appeasing others and proving them wrong. Even my quest to bring Sasuke back was not my own feelings, but Sakura's. I honestly felt that she would look at me in a different light if I were to bring Sasuke back for her." Sakura was kind of caught off guard by his answer, but was too speechless to say what she wanted to say. "Traveling and training with Iro Sennin taught me a valuable lesson in life that I will never forget. My life is my own life to live, and I shouldn't live it for others just to make them happy, ignoring my own feelings. I made several friends over those years and almost lost them all. So you decided to run away from it all then?" Tsunade asked in a loud, stern voice. The sheer volume in her voice woke Yumehime up from her sleep, which in the process woke up Naruto's hidden courage to face the ex-Hokage, like he used to do in the past, when he was the annoying loud-mouthed. Of course, he couldn't look weak in front of his Yumi-chan. "No, I didn't run away. I just chose another path to take." Naruto said as he stared at his surrogate mother straight in her eyes, not showing any sign of backing down. Both Shizune and Tsunade caught on to the source of his sudden outburst of courage and smiled to themselves. "Then why didn't you visit us? You could have at least told us of your daughter's birth." Shizune asked, finally speaking. "The time wasn't right. I now have a new situation that I am mixed in that is twice as dangerous as the threat of the Akatsuki or having a bounty on my head in the bingo book. We needed to make sure that Yumehime was old enough to travel before we returned to this village, not to mention it is now time for the Chunin exams." "What does the Chunin exam have anything to do with this?" Tsunade asked. "What better time to sneak into the village than when the village is at its all-time busiest?" He answered with a toothy grin on his face that reminded them of his younger self. "You're lying." Tsunade once again narrowed her eyes at Naruto. "Well, not completely. There might be someone here very dangerous searching for something in this village. This person is more than an enemy to Yugito-chan and me, and maybe more of a threat than Orochimaru. We plan on stopping him right here before he gets any stronger." "Who is this person?" "We should let Kakashi know right away if he truly is a threat to the village. This is something that only we can take care of." Yugito said. "Which brings us to the second reason why we are here. We need a huge favor from the two of you. And that is, we wished for you to watch over Yumi-chan while we were in the village. We don't know how dangerous things will get while he is here, and we need the reassurance that she will be okay no matter what. But Yumehime can fight too." Yumehime glared up at her dad. "Yeah, but it's still too early for you, Yumi-chan." "But Yumehime," Yugito said in a very firm tone that meant business, causing her to make an sound before burying her face into her father's cloak. "You didn't have to be so firm with her. You just spoil her too much." Naruto sighed out loud as he returned his attention to the ex-Hokage. Tsunade leaned back in her seat and pulled out a bottle of sake she was hiding under it. Shizune glared at her but let it go due to the situation. "On one condition, you have to tell me what is going on. What are you so involved in that is more dangerous than Akatsuki or Orochimaru could be?" Naruto sighed out loud as he leaned back against the couch before he looked over at Yugito. It seemed the two of them were communicating with their eyes before Yugito leaned forward and started speaking. To start things off, Naruto isn't the only one who was born with a grave burden. She paused for a second, allowing the news to sink in. "There are artifacts in this world that are said to be as old as time, and they only seem to react to the yokai of a. Just one of these artifacts holds enough power to wipe out a village twice the size of this one if placed in the wrong hands. Naruto has 2 and I have 1 right now, but there is no telling how many of them are out there. There is a rumor that one of these artifacts is somewhere in this village, and our enemy just happened to be like us, one of the stronger ones, and he has a lot of political influence, which makes it hard to get close to him. So, we have reason to believe that he will make an appearance here as well. How did you get a hold of something so dangerous? Naruto Tsunade asked. One of them was a gift from my father. Father? Did you find your parents? Both Tsunade and Shizune look at Sakura for a second, forgetting that she didn't know anything about Naruto's parents, thanks to the Sandame's law. Not really, since they both died on the day I was born. Jiraiya knew my father and gave it to me when he felt I was mature enough to handle it. Of course, this was before we knew what it actually was. Naruto decided to just leave it at that, since he didn't feel like talking too much about his late parents. Tsunade sensed this and quickly changed the subject. So why are you taking this responsibility on your shoulders? Because we both know how strong he is now, and if we allow others to take care of this and fail, it would be too late for us to do anything about it. Plus the annoying fact that he knows we have 3 in our possession, so it would only be a matter of time before he came after us anyway, since he wants them all. The room was silent for a moment until Yumahem yawned out loud, snapping everyone out of their serious trance. Okay then, we will take care of your daughter while you two deal with things, but you will have to visit us every now and then, after you leave the village, despite who is trying to kill you, or I will hunt you and kill you, personally. Tsunade threatened with a smirk on her face, to which Naruto swallowed hard. At night, the sky was clear, giving anyone who was interested a lucid view of the stars. A cool, gentle breeze blew as the blades of grass began to dance, transforming the plain into an ocean of green. Suddenly, the sounds of footsteps were heard, followed by several more. The first set of footsteps stopped right in the center of the field, as their owner turned around and watched as more men appeared behind him with all sorts of weapons in their possession. Are you sure you want to do this? The owner of the original footsteps asked as he placed his left hand on top of the hilt of his katana, which was resting in its sheath. We will never forgive you for what you did to our lord. Even if it means that your lives will be forfeit in the process. The man glared at his pursuers with such intensity that his eyes became visible, even under the dark veil of the night that covered the field. Another breeze blew past them as everyone became silent. As soon as the wind stopped blowing, a batch of clouds flew in front of the moon, shrouding the field in complete darkness as 3 of the 10 men dashed toward him. He lightly stepped forward, easily dodging the first attack, and landed a powerful blow to the second man's chest, causing him to land on his back. In the same motion, he sent a side kick to the third attacker, lifting him off the ground with the brute force of the kick. Quicker than the first man could even breathe, he slashed through his neck with his katana as he quickly placed it back in the sheath. Blood began to float along with the wind as the 9 remaining men looked on in horror. None of them even saw or heard him draw his katana, but they all heard him resheath it. Just as quickly as the clouds came in, they dispersed, allowing the light of the moon to shine brightly on the scene. One of the men now laid sprawl out as his blood continued to leak out like a broken faucet. Now, do you really wish to continue this pointless fight? It was obvious that he merely allowed them to hear him sheath his katana to show them just who they were fighting. The same thought went through every one of their minds as they braced themselves for anything. He was clearly on a completely different planet when it came to ability. But they couldn't let that stop them. This man had just killed their lord and was announcing himself as the new lord of the land. There was no way in hell they were going to allow this to happen, even if the people didn't know of their bravery and quest for justice. The other 2 men dusted themselves off and pulled out a katana of their own. An annoyed expression grew on his face as he closed his eyes. In an instant, the once clear and beautiful night sky was covered in clouds once again as the sky began to bellow with thunder, as if it were angry. He forcefully opened his eyes, causing all of them to be frozen in their spot, as they all were sliced in several different places under a few seconds. The clouds began to burst as it started to pour down on him, as the rain showered away all the excess blood that was covering his body. How pointless. Do you enjoy watching your men kill themselves? Who said those were my men? They were just pawns that helped me achieve a much greater purpose. I was just going to let this go, but your abilities have sparked an interest in me. Not to mention that katana you wield, that wouldn't happen to be Kusanagi, now wouldn't it? And I never would have fathomed the idea of finding an artifact this far out. Maybe it was a good thing that I helped that old nonsense keep this land alive for so long after all. Another cloud covered the moon, cutting off all light sources. Lightning suddenly struck, revealing the stranger standing right in front of him with a smirk on his face. You're a strange one, huh? You are not even yet. It seems you can wield this artifact. But how much of that was you and how much of that was the katana? He gently rested his hand on his hilt like before, causing the stranger's grin to grow even wider. I will have to find out up close and personal. As soon as the cloud that was covering the moon was gone, the stranger disappeared. He quickly drew his katana just in time to deflect the attack of a metal staff type of weapon. But the source of the weapon wasn't anywhere to be found. He quickly swiped his katana to the left, deflecting the second attack that appeared out of nowhere. Very good. Suddenly, the stranger leaped up from the ground and almost landed a high kick to his chin, but at the last minute, he leaned backwards, allowing the tip of the stranger's foot to only graze it. The impact was still enough to launch him into the air, where the stranger landed a powerful attack with his staff right in his abdomen, causing him to spit out blood as he landed on his back. But he quickly hopped back on his feet, ready to counter as his katana collided with the man's metal staff. The stranger used his own attack against his opponent as he thrust forward, landing another hit against his chest, pushing him backwards. The man then slammed his staff against the ground and created a shockwave to stream toward him. His dark almond pupils shifted to a crimson red as 3 times formed in the corner of his eyes. At the same instant he swung his katana at the ground, sending a violent amount of chakra into it, negating the man's attack. Interesting. I see that you can use the Kusanagi properly, and I also never imagined that I would get to face off one of your kind, since you all died out several years ago. About time you get serious, Ichiha. As lightning struck the sky, the man launched the staff at him, but he quickly knocked the staff to the side with his katana. What he wasn't expecting was a second staff to collide with chest again as he slid backwards. That was when he saw for the first time that a chakra chain connected both staffs to one another. So you finally saw it, huh? Guess those eyes are as deadly as the rumors say, eh? Let's see just how this artifact can fare against that Kusanagi of yours. The stranger pulled back on the chain, causing both parts of the staff to fly back to him as they connected with one another, joining in their complete form. The Uchiha took this time to get even closer by using his immense speed. The stranger was caught off guard a little bit by just how fast he was, but it still wasn't enough as a giant wall of wind burst between them, sending the Uchiha flying backwards once again. The stranger leaped over the wall and slammed the tip of his staff in the ground, just barely missing the Uchiha, thanks to a quick roll on his part. But that was what the stranger was expecting. Suddenly, the Uchiha felt a large amount of chakra pulsate from the staff as the ground around it was set on fire. The stranger leaped down on the ground and swung the staff sideways, creating a massive amount of wind that sent the flames running in all directions, scorching everything they touched. The Uchiha was forced to quickly backpedal to avoid the flames, but he also backpedaled right into the stranger's trap as he ran right into a tunnel of wind that began to rip his entire body. That is if it was the real him. At the last second, his body puffed in a cloud of dark smoke, causing the stranger to chuckle. As the fires continued to run rampant through the fields, the stranger just stood there like a statue as his bleach-white cloak flapped wildly in the wind. He suddenly thrust his staff forward, catching the Uchiha right before he attacked, and followed up by separating his staff again and grabbing the left part and slamming it hard against the Uchiha's face, sending him crashing to the ground. I have to say I am kind of disappointed in your capability, and I was hoping that I could use you in the future, but you turn out to be just another pawn. Who said I would work for you anyway? Also, who said I was even here? Huh? The Uchiha's body began to dissolve into a pit of snakes as they began to leap at the stranger. He sent several blades of wind shredding right through the snakes even before they got close. So you were holding back. He combined his staff again and turned his back to the fire as he began to slowly but calmly walk off. We should continue this some time when we both aren't holding back. It would be wise for you to come to Konohagakure if you value your life. After I succeed there I will return here to kill you and take Kusanagi unless you provide some unneeded interference. He slung a kunai to a nearby tree before the stranger's body began to dissolve into tiny particles. Those transformed into a grey wolf as it began to run off in the direction of the village. The Uchiha reached up, grabbed the kunai that missed his skull only by a few inches, and glared at it with his crimson orbs. Who the hell was that? Can you follow his chakra, Karen? Vaguely, he's quite skilled at hiding his chakra. I'm even getting confused on whether or not it is a real chakra trail or not. Throughout your entire fight with him, his chakra kept changing in a very abnormal way. She paused for a second as she watched him stared out in the distance. Konoha again, ha, he said as his eyes returned to normal. More importantly, are you alright, Sasuke-kun? Yeah, I am. I was just caught a little off guard. Do you know what he was talking about when he mentioned artifacts? Not exactly. There has been a strange rumor about powerful weapons resurfacing from the past though. Why? Sasuke looked down at his katana that he had inherited from the late Orochimaru before returning it to its sheath. Where are Jugo and Sujetsu right now? They are both back in town, waiting for us to return. Okay. Get some rest tonight. Why? What's wrong? We are leaving earlier in the morning. Where to? Konoha, of course. 3. The sun blazed over the Chunin hopefuls as over 25 teams of genin stood in front of the gates of the Forest of Death. Even though this was probably the most dangerous part of the exam, most of them were more worried about dying from the heat or the instructor who was in charge of this event. It seemed that Anko's favorite dango shop had been shut down temporarily due to some foreign genin vandalizing the place last night. The shop owner didn't know who exactly did it, but he did know that they were wearing a foreign 8. It took Kakashi everything he had to keep Anko from going on a killing spree on all of the genin in the village. Listen up, Chibi. If you were hoping that this test would be as easy as the last one, then I'll kill you. Myself, the amount of killer intent she was releasing left more than the majority of them frozen in their tracks. You have exactly 3 days and nights to collect the other scroll with the one in your possession and arrive at the tower in the middle of the forest. It is against the rules to open any of the scrolls before reaching the tower. Who disobeyed will be forced to undergo excruciating consequences. She forced Kakashi to cave into her idea when it came to the punishment for breaking the rules during the test, which were to allow her to do whatever she wanted, besides kill them. It was obvious to everyone that she was out for blood. I see Anko-sensei is a little bit crazier than normal. Don't you think so? A Konoha genin wearing all blue with his 8 tied around her shoulder and a blue rag tied to the other arm in the same spot. Really? It is hard for me to tell half the time. Aoi-chan, her teammate, who was draped in the standard shinobi attire except for the 4 kunai that were hanging off the side of his 8 that he wore around his head, said as he glared up at the sky wishing he wasn't there. Not because he was scared, but because he just didn't feel like doing anything. Ryu sort of has a point there. I've been afraid of Anko-sensei since she began to help out Ino-sensei with our training. A timid Kunoichi, who was wearing a dark red shinobi skirt with black biker shorts underneath and a dark. You're just imagining things, Suzuka. Anko-sensei is really cool, and I can tell that something is wrong with her right now. Both of Aoi's teammates gave her a strange look. What? You mean besides how she normally is? During this time, Naruto and Yugito were hiding in the forest close to the entrance, watching for something that felt out of place, which was hard to do thanks to all the weirdos that were from the other villages. I see Anko hasn't changed any. Anko? The instructor who is currently threatening the genin. Oh, that aura she's giving off right now is even giving me the chills. Yeah, she does that to people. Suddenly there was a loud shout before all the gates were opened, allowing the genin to dash into the forest, oblivious to what lay in wait for them there. An ominous breeze blew through the great ocean of giant trees. The trees were so thick and high it made it nearly impossible to tell whether it was day or night. There was no telling how many teams had been taken out already, but it was very obvious how dangerous this forest was, judging by the very powerful killer intent that was surging throughout the forest. It still was a surprise to many that Konohagakure would hold an exam taking place in this forest again. Now, over 20 teams of genin were fighting for their futures and possibly their lives. I can't believe how much this place used to give me the chills. Naruto said as he placed his hand against one of the trees. Now this all feels like a walk in a park sort of. Both Naruto and Yugito were deep in the forest, searching for any trace of the artifact that was rumored to be in Konoha. They had decided that this would be the key place judging from the amount of history this forest held. Legend has it that this place served as the shrine for the Nibi no Nekomata and the Shinigami. Not to mention the fact that all 3 of the artifacts that they already owned were pulsating enough to vibrate against their bodies when they moved. Did you say anything? Yugito asked as she continued to stare up at the forest ceiling. What are you looking at? You've been staring up for the longest. I'm just wondering when those damn geniuses that have been trailing us are going to make their first move. Leave them alone. I don't feel like explaining to Aba-chan why genin blood was spilled. Plus, if they are truly hopeful, they would know that we are an enemy that can't be defeated by anyone their level. He stated, not bluffing in the least. If the legends are true, then the forest bed may be flooded with the crimson liquid. Naruto sighed out loud as he leaned up against a nearby tree. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Looking down from the looming branches and leaves, she gave the distance a contemplating look with a soft smile. I wonder how strong some of these genes are. She mused. Not strong enough to take you on. Naruto said right before he took out a canteen and took a sip. It would serve as the perfect test for the future, don't you think? You're acting weird. You're usually the one holding me back from going wild. Naruto walked up to her and gently grabbed her shoulder. As she looked up at him, he nearly jumped backwards. Both of her pupils were slits, and her canines were long. He could already imagine that her claws were out too. It was almost as if she was taking over. What is happening to you? I don't know. It's just suddenly my primal instincts have been going wild ever since I stepped foot in this forest. She suddenly gripped Naruto's wrist tightly as her claws began to dig into his skin, drawing blood. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably as tears began to flow down her pale cheeks. Naruto placed his free arm around her and pulled her closer to him. He gently kissed her forehead and slightly began rubbing her forehead. It'll be okay. I'm here for you. He noticed that her body began to settle down a little bit as her human traits started to resurface. Now a sudden shout caused Naruto to swear under his breath as he turned to see 3 genin leaping out of the trees with kunai aimed at them. Now is not a good time for this. Read the atmosphere, Naruto yelled right before Yugito broke free from his grip and allowed her chakra to rise out of control. The look on the genin faces went pale as they realized that they had literally stepped right into the lion's den unknowingly. Yugito's chakra was so hot that the dirt below her feet began to scorch in flames, her eyes reshaping to her bijous as she crouched down in a stance ready to pounce on her prey. "Shit," Naruto yelled as he leaped in front of her. "Run now," he yelled at the genin behind him, but they were literally frozen stiff from the immense amount of killer intent Yugito was emitting in waves. Yugito calmed down now. Instead of the response he was hoping for, she leaped at him in blazing speeds that almost caught him off guard. He slightly tilted backwards enough to allow her momentum to carry her above him before he grabbed her waist and slammed her to the ground on her back. He instantly rolled over on top of her and began to pin her down. It was taking all of his strength just to restrain her as she struggled violently to get free. "What the hell has gotten in you?" Naruto looked back up at the genin and noticed that they were wearing Konoha and thought that this was just getting worse by the second. "I told you three to run." Damn it, Yugito suddenly summoned enough strength to push her and Naruto off the ground. In the moment when they both reached their zenith, she pushed both her legs into the air, landing a heavy blow to Naruto's abdomen and knocking the breath out of him. She instantly followed up with a backhand, sending him crashing to the ground. She then flipped over just in time to land on her feet. "Ugh, you were the last person I wanted to fight ever," Naruto said as he grabbed his stomach. He felt a very cold breeze as he noticed ice form around Yugito's legs. He instantly looked over at the genin and noticed the girl in all blue was holding hands in the Taurus seal, channeling more and more chakra into the dot. "Don't agitate her anymore and run. Next time she may actually kill you. Learn to control your woman," the other genin yelled as he pulled a kunai off his hiatus and slung it at Yugito. Naruto instantly appeared in front of him and instantly batted away the kunai, causing it to explode right in his hands. "Ha. You fell for it." "Fell for what?" The genin looked up as the dust cleared, revealing an unharmed Naruto with a very cold look on his face. "What the hell are you two?" the genin demanded as he fell down in shock. "Way out of your league, that's what." Suddenly there was another explosion coming from behind Naruto. As he turned around he noticed that Yugito had finally freed herself and was now wielding her scythe with a very menacing mask on her face. "And here I was hoping Kasatsu wouldn't make an appearance." Naruto grunted as he reached behind his back and grabbed Kamikaze and used it to deflect her attack as the ground behind her instantly began to wilt and die while a massive squall formed behind Naruto and sent the genin flying backwards. Naruto took this chance to quickly draw Kagakusai and slash a power wave of flames at her feet, causing her to jump in the air to dodge, leaving her open for Naruto's next attack. He quickly sheathed Kamikaze and struck her neck in one of her vital points, knocking her unconscious in one big motion. Her body fell limp as she started to decline before Naruto caught up in his arms. "You know, you can be really troublesome sometimes," Naruto grunted as he gently laid her down on the ground and sheathed Kagakusai. "You guys aren't genin, are you?" The first genin in all blue asked as she was the first to appear with the other two quickly following after her. "You guys picked the wrong prey to attack at the worst possible time. Read your opponent more before you decide to attack. Oh, and never sound your attack. Even an unskilled shinobi can defend himself if he hears his enemies coming." Naruto glared at the genin before returning to tend to his wife. "If you're not a genin, then what the hell are you doing in the forest? Are you the judges?" the male genin asked as he rubbed a bump on his head he gained from hitting a tree thanks to the guest from Naruto and Yugito's attack. "Not obligated to answer any of your questions right now. Now hurry up and move on before things get even more dangerous." "What do you mean?" the other female finally spoke as she hid behind the blue genin, who seemed to be the leader of their group. Naruto only sighed louder. "Help me get her on my back and I will answer that question. You won't try to attack us, will you?" the blue genin asked. Naruto only chuckled. "If I wanted to, you all would have been dead when you guys decided to follow us over 6 hours ago. You knew. It was obvious and would have been able to realize they were being followed with the way you all were moving. Though I do have to applaud your ability for sensing chakra, since no one was able to read us but you guys. We are skilled enough to completely mask our chakra trace and smell, making us nearly untraceable. That is thanks to Suzuka's special ability. She can read the life forces of her surroundings. I see, but she can't gauge how strong her opponent is yet." Yeah, without thinking about it any further, she helped Naruto get Yugito on his back. He made sure she was stable before standing back up. "So what did you mean by things that could get more dangerous?" she asked. "There are more things in this forest besides you genin, some being our enemies who are on par with us if not stronger, and that shock wave of chakra that was sent out was like a flare to our whereabouts. What is going on? But I can't tell you because this has nothing to do with Konoha right now." But he handed her a tiny scroll. "If you cross someone just as strong as us, and you are more than positive that it is not another genin, then open this scroll. But only open this if you are 200% sure that it isn't a genin. It will not help you in this exam, and it's a one-time only use." She looked over the scroll several times before looking back at him. "What is it? A secret?" Shouldn't Hokage-sama be told about this, the boy asked. He already knows, he and I had a conversation about things, and I told him to stay out of it. Who are you again? The only thing I will say is that I used to be your Hokage-sama's best student, Uzumaki Naruto. He said with a very toothy grin on his face before disappearing. Dude, what the hell was that all about? Ryu asked as he dusted himself off. Suzuka only gave him a blank look as she continued to stay glued to Aoi's back. Now I have to find out who he is, Aoi said as she placed a tiny scroll in her dark blue pouch that was strapped to her left thigh. Don't tell me you believed that guy. He wasn't with a Konoha hit I ate, so what makes you think that he was one of us? Didn't you hear the story about Hokage-sama's only team? No, not really. I chose to listen only when needed, and I decided that all that nonsense was just nonsense. Ryu said in a proud tone as if it was an honorable deal, causing Aoi to sigh out loud. Baka, I resent that. Don't yell, Baka, stop calling me that. Yell again and I'll freeze your tongue and cut it off. Got it? She walked up to him with her fist balled tighter and flames literally blazing inside of her pupils. Ryu started to say something, but decided it would be wise to hold his tongue, or he might actually lose it. He learned the hard way that Aoi wasn't a kunoichi that you would piss off and get away with it. She was already considered the strongest of the genin of their year. I remember the story, Suzuka said, breaking the glaring contest that the other two were having. Haruno-san was also a member of that team. They were supposed to potentially be the strongest resell team in Konoha history. Supposed, Ryu asked, causing Aoi to give him an exhausted look. Yes, the other two abandoned the village for unknown reasons. See? That means he's a nuke-nin. We shouldn't trust him. No. I think we can't kill him, otherwise, why would he save us from that kunoichi? I don't know, maybe to keep Konoha from finding out he is here. I don't trust the guy and I don't think you should either. This is the forest of death, Baka. If we were to die, then it would just be blamed on the exam. Plus, he could wipe us out easily without leaving a trace. It wouldn't be for days before they discover that we are either dead or missing. Enough time to allow him to escape the village. Suzuka tightened her grip on Aoi's sleeve as she slightly began to tremble. Don't worry, Suzuka. I know he's not that type of person. How? That was the first time you ever saw him, ours too. I'm an expert when it comes to reading people. I knew you were a Baka from day one, and we all know I was right about that. Ryu just growled under his breath as he motioned to walk ahead of them. Suzuka giggled lightly at her teammates' usual taunting. Despite the situations they were in, those two always managed to make things lighter than normal. Unfortunately or fortunately for them, that incident with Naruto and Yugito would be the only excitement they would receive for the day, as nightfall quickly set in quicker than any of them wanted for different reasons, though. Aoi was anxious to get their second scroll so they could get to the next part. She had many honorable traits that made her an excellent shinobi, but the thing she lacked the most was patience. Ryu just wanted to finally prove that he would be the dominant one of the team, despite what you thought. He couldn't wait to outdo her in the exams so he could rub it in her face. Suzuka on the other hand just wanted to go home. She hated how much the forest scared her, and the only reason why she was in the exams was because of Aoi. Aoi and her had been childhood friends since birth. Aoi had always acted like her big sister and protected her from bullies and wild dogs. Ryu used to be one of those bullies for as long as she could remember. The last thing she wanted was to let her down of all people. We're going to set up camp here. Aoi announced as she took a seat on a stump and began to rub her legs. Suzuka quickly sat down beside her. Ryu glanced up at the sky and began to frown. The sun is still out. We need our rest now. When nightfall comes, most of the inactive teams will go on the hunt. But that's why we have Suzuka. She can just tell us when someone is about to sneak up on us. Aoi began to rub her temple, as if she had a headache as she groaned. We can't always rely on Suzuka's gift, you know. Not to mention the strain she goes through to keep it activated for as long as she did. And you heard Naruto, there are also guys out there who are just as strong as he is. They may be able to track us without Suzuka knowing. There is no such thing as a perfect, we learned that in the academy. Well, at least we did. Ryu growled again as he glared at her. Here we go with the Naruto thing again. I don't understand how you can trust someone who you don't even know. We already went over this. You are beginning to sound like a broken record, Baka. Ryu. I think it's better if we take a rest too. Suzuka said in her gentle tone, trying to play peacemaker. There you have it. It's 2 against 1 now, so it's decided that we set up camp now. She shouldn't even count. She always takes your side. That's because my side always makes sense. Conceded much? Only to the ignorant, she said with a large grin on her face that finally sent Ryu over the edge with anger. That's it. He pulled out a kunai and aimed it at her throat, which caused Aoi to give him a look that was literally daring him to do something. We decided right here, right now, who is the leader of the group. That has already been settled too, Baka. Ino-sensei is the leader until she declares someone is second in command. Then why do you always act like the leader? I only decide things that are reasonable and logical, while you decide things that are idiotic and incomprehensible. Now, I'm only going to say this again once, do not yell and drop the kunai. She stated in a calm voice as she continued to glare up at him. Let's just camp for now, okay? Ryu Suzuka asked as she stared up at him with pleading eyes. Ryu made an incoherent grunt noise as he pulled back his kunai and walked over to a nearby tree and plopped down. Fine, I don't care anymore. That's a good boy. Aoi Suzuka gave Aoi a very disapproving glare that caused her to sigh. Gomen. Before they decided to rest completely, Suzuka set up several triggers and spread them over 50 yards in all directions that was geared to notify her with a light jolt when someone with a life force similar to that of a human or large animal crossed it. Despite his arguing, Ryu was the first to fall asleep after a few minutes of silence. Aoi, on the other hand, was the last to. She was toying with the scroll that Naruto gave her. It had an interesting design that she hadn't seen before. It had some kind of seal on it that she hadn't seen before that seemed to put her in a trance as she traced it with her index finger. Suddenly Suzuka began to stir in her sleep, causing Aoi to snap out of her daydream as she glanced over at her dot. Despite how hard she tried to protect her, Suzuka was the one who had improved more than all of them. She only got noticed because she was more open with her abilities. Suzuka was the only genin she wasn't sure if she could beat or not in a real fight. So, what do we have here? A foreign voice asked, causing Aoi to leap up in shock. She glanced up to see someone in an all-black hooded cloak that made him look almost like a ghost. She glanced back at Suzuka and noticed that she had a pained look on her face. So that's why she was getting restless. Aoi asked herself as she quickly began to go through several methods to keep them all alive. Where's your team? Aoi asked in a commanding tone. Team? I don't need one. She slowly placed her hand on the ground, hoping it wouldn't see her. Don't think I can't see your hand move. If you want to live, it is better for you to just remain still and answer a few questions of mine. His raspy depth caused Suzuka to wake up and nearly jump when she saw the man's figure. And those questions are: there was a very powerful chakra explosion earlier today. Do you know what caused that? Why do you need to know? Aoi asked as she glanced around him to see if Ryu was alright. He was still fast asleep. Baka, she yelled in her head. I'm the one asking questions here. No, I don't know what it was. That is why we were heading the opposite direction. The shadowy figure seemed to be pleased with her answer until his eyes caught something that was in her other hand. And where did you get that tiny little scroll? This she slightly raised a scroll to make sure that was what he was asking about. It's a memento from my father to wish me good luck for the exams. I see. The battle cry of her stupid teammate caused her to regret the day the Shikamaru sensei decided that he would be their third teammate. Ryu slung several of his special kunai at the man, creating a barrage of explosions. As soon as he landed on the ground, he slung several more, adding the explosive demotion show he was putting on. He quickly backpedaled, pulling out a katana this time and reading himself for anything. It was safe to say that Aoi was quite surprised by his movements and that she felt like she was watching someone else. That was when it hit her, his movements were almost identical to those of Naruto save for the fact that they were horribly sloppy. As soon as the smoke cleared, the man was still standing there, or levitating since you couldn't see his feet, with only a few scorch marks on his robe. How the hell does everybody just bat off my attacks? Ryu yelled in frustration as he charged towards him. Baka, stop! Aoi yelled as she watched the man wave one hand, sending Ryu flying hard into a tree. Aoi sent a pulse of her chakra that created a wave of ice that caught the bottom of his robe. It seemed it was just enough to immobilize him temporarily. She then dropped the scroll Naruto gave her and punched the ground with her other hand, launching a much larger wave of ice, this time completely encasing him in a miniature glacier. Suzuka was still locked with fear as Ryu rammed his katana through the black ice with his left hand. He then followed up by going through several hand seals with his right hand, right before he gripped the hilt with both hands, causing the blade of the katana to blaze up in a violent array of warm colors before an intense explosion sent everyone in the area flying. Aoi caught her balance in midair and forced herself to land on her feet as she caught Suzuka by her waist and pulled her close to her. Ryu ran up to them with the largest smile on his face. Baka, Aoi yelled as she glared at him. Hey, don't complain. We got him, didn't we? What do you think of my latest? I was hoping to keep it a secret from you until I used it on you. Oh well. It's too flashy. The same raspy voice answered as he levitated over a limb in the tree behind him. Ryu quickly threw several shurikens with explosive tags on them towards him, but he watched as they soared right through him, as if he wasn't even there. The weapons landed in the tree, causing another explosion of lesser magnitude than the previous. The top part of the tree began to collapse as fire consumed it. You really enjoy your fireworks, eh, Chibi? Ink is really starting to wear my nerves. We have more important things to worry about thanks to you, Baka Aoi yelled as she pulled him and Suzuka along with her as she began to run. Why are we running? I never run from a challenge. Fine, Aoi yelled as she released him. Fend for yourself then. That guy is clearly out of your league, but if you want to commit suicide then be my guest. There is no need to worry about that. You all will be dying here together anyway. Aoi turned around to see the strange man levitating in front of her now. When did he get in front of us? Aoi thought as she realized her options were running short. The scroll. Suzuka said, her eyes flashing blue as it was formed around them. Thanks to the heat of the moment, Aoi had forgotten all about the scroll that Naruto gave her. She glanced behind her and noticed that the scroll was still on the ground several yards down. Ryu, you think you can get the scroll back there? Hell, the scroll. Just do it if you can. I'm serious, Ryu growled as he stared at the scroll. He couldn't believe he was risking his life for something this pointless. He would rather die fighting anyway, not trying to retrieve a pointless item that a dangerous Newtonin gave them. That scroll seems to have some sort of importance to you. Don't think I'll let you get it that easily. The man said as he suddenly appeared in a black haze in front of Ryu right before he backhanded him. But to his surprise, the attack had no effect on Ryu, who quickly began to sprint toward the scroll. The man glanced up at Suzuka, whose eyes were still flashing blue. That girl? Interesting. I wonder how much she can hold out. She doesn't need to hold back anymore, Aoi yelled with a smile on her face. The reason why I sent Ryu after the scroll was because he was always the fastest in the academy, so fast that no one was even near him. Open the scroll now. Whatever, Ryu yelled as he unraveled the scroll. Suddenly, a bright flash of light was set off as a very loud growl was heard. What was that? The newcomer asked as he turned around. In the blink of an eye, he found himself staring down at the eyes of a large kitsune with silver flames for fur, as its three tails were swinging around like they had a mind of their own. The man leapt backwards, finally revealing to them that he did have feet, trying to create some distance between himself and the beast, but he quickly found himself wrapped up by one of its tails, and his cloak began to burn from the immense heat. His body suddenly disappeared in the same black mist as earlier. Suddenly, a little wooden statue dropped to the ground as the kitsune began to sniff it. It then glared over at Aoi before disappearing in a blaze of fire, leaving nothing but smoke in its place. Is it gone? Ryu asked as he surveyed their surroundings. I don't know. Aoi answered as she walked up to the statue and picked it up. What's that? Suzuka asked as she too took a closer look. I don't have a clue what it is. It's my first time seeing anything of the sort. Weird. Oh well, now maybe we can finally get some shut-eye. Ryu said while yawning. Sleep. It's already morning. We can do all the sleeping we want when we get the hell out of the forest. Nani? Let's move it before something else comes to get us. Aoi stated as she began to walk. Suzuka quickly followed behind her, while Ryu merely growled and stared at the back of her head. Thanks to the rest, it seemed that Yugito had finally calmed down a little, but she still was far from normal. Her left eye remained in its yakai state, while her claws were still out. At least now she could control herself, unlike before. How long have you been awake? She asked as she realized that she was resting in Naruto's lap with his arms around her. All night. Gomenasai, no need to apologize to me. We just need to figure out what's causing your control over the Nekomata to go out of control. Naruto said in a very gentle voice. Yugito smiled as she felt the warmth of her husband's body and snuggled even closer to him. I think this forest has something to do with it. How so? Well, this is rumored to be the prison of the Nekomata back in the past, right? Maybe it's reacting to its surroundings for fear of being trapped in here again. Maybe. Before Naruto could finish his sentence, he noticed a sudden pinch of chakra pulsating from his arm as a little kid appeared in a blaze of fire. I see they used you, eh? The kid nodded its head before yawning and disappearing in a puff of smoke. Well, now we know for sure that we are not the only ones looking for the artifact here too. I guess that just makes us that much closer. Yup. Hopefully we can get to it before they do. Yeah. While Naruto and Yugito were hunting down the rumored artifact in the Forest of Death, Yumehime was trying her best to behave while fighting off boredom. One could say living with the two had caused her to view the plain and slow life as uninteresting and downright dull. It was becoming a task for her to stay awake as she sat on the couch with her legs crossed, watching some random shinobi soap opera, not understanding what was going on at all. She yawned once as she watched a kunoichi slap the man she was talking to and storm off. She heard someone enter the room and again yawned. Don't you think it's too early for her to be watching soap operas? Tsunade-sama Shizune asked right before she realized that said person wasn't even paying attention as she took another gulp of sake before yawning herself. And I also don't think it is appropriate to drink in front of her too, Shizune scolded. I'm sure that she won't pick up any random habit of mine or from that show. She is much smarter than you think. She is a huge surprise when you consider who her father is. Shizune giggled a little. Another yawn from Yumehime caused both of them to glance in her direction. Are you sleepy? Shizune asked as she walked up to her. Nope. You sure? Yup. You're not lying, are you? Yumehime wouldn't lie to Shizune Ni-chan. She started with a huge grin on her face that brought home memories of the young Naruto for Shizune. Yumehime is bored, she dragged on as she glanced back toward the TV. I see. Well, would you like to hang out with Sakura at the hospital today? Yumehim's eyes literally lit up as she nodded her head. She would rather enjoy doing anything but just sitting still all day. Okay then, Sakura will be there any minute now. I'll let you know when she gets here. Okay. Shizune smiled again before walking into the kitchen to fix her a drink of juice, right before she heard a knock at the front door. That was faster than I thought. Shizune said to herself as she went to open the door. There stood in front of the door a very flustered Sakura with one Konohamaru smiling with several bruises on his head. What happened to you? Someone thought it would be a good idea to try out a new type of hentai on some of the genin at the hospital. Sakura stated. Hey, they looked down in the dumps, and I wanted to give them a little bit of excitement to help them out. Konohamaru said as he slowly started to shy away from his oppressor. And here I thought you had grown out of that childish stage of yours. I mean, even Naruto was able to do it, why in hell can't you? Sakura yelled as a random vein popped up in her forehead. It seemed that the two had forgotten all about Shizune, who was standing in front of them. Oh, I'm here to give the daily reports to Shishu-sama. This one just decided to tag along hoping to find Naruto. Aren't you the instructor for the third exam? Why aren't you preparing for that? Shizune asked. Well, the second exam just started and I figured that I still had a day to enjoy the festivals. Okay, both Naruto and Yugito are out doing something right now. Why didn't you tell him that, Sakura? This kid is just as stubborn as Naruto used to be. Not a kid anyway. What are they doing? I can't really say, to be honest. Konohamaru seemed to think of something as his eyes went off somewhere. The sound of a very annoying to him that is caused him to be abruptly brought back to reality. Konnichiwa, Sakura ni-chan, Yumehime shouted as she dashed to the door. That reminds me, is it okay if Yumehime goes with you for a little bit? I think she is getting bored with just sitting around the house doing nothing. It's okay with me. Naruto also couldn't sit still for a long time either. It's amazing how much she reminds me of him every time I see her face. But I'm positive that she got her brains from her mother. Tsunade said, suddenly appearing behind Shizune. Don't just stand at the front door all day and come in. Sakura, follow me to my study so we can go over the reports. Hi. The group of Shizune, Konohamaru, and Yumehime walked into the living room as the other two went off to discuss business. Konohamaru was sort of sitting on pins and needles as he watched a young girl sit down on the couch and cross her legs. She was quite too quiet for his liking. For some reason he couldn't get over the thought that she was plotting something against him, the little monster. Nani? Yumehime asked as Konohamaru realized that he was staring at her. Where did your parents go? Yumehime turned her head and proceeded to ignore him as if the TV was more important to him. Hey. I ask you a question. He slightly raised his voice to show her that he had the authority, but she only continued to watch TV. Yumehime is trying to watch TV. She started without even glancing at him. Konohamaru's face grew a dark shade of red as he tried to bite back his frustration and anger. Do you guys want anything to drink? Shizune asked as she returned to the living with a couple of cups of juice. Arigato, Yumehime said as she reached up and grabbed a cup. So polite, who taught you such manners? My papa-daughter smile was almost blinding. This good girl act is making me sick, Konohamaru thought. I think you should take notes from her, Konohamaru-kun. Shizune said as she handed him a cup as well. He merely scoffed at the thought until he caught Yumehime sticking her tongue out at him. Hey. What is it? Shizune asked Yumehime, enough time to return to her normal position before Shizune saw her. Nothing, he said as he took a sip. Shizune stepped back out of the room, allowing Konohamaru to shoot a very hateful glare at the girl. Suddenly all of the juice in his cup slapped him, splashing all over his face and clothes. He instantly shot a look over at Yumehime, who was watching TV but wearing a very dark grin. He knew she was the cause of this oddity, but he didn't even sense her use any chakra at all. You guys, what the hell did you do to yourself this time? Sakura scolded as soon as she walked into the living room to see a fuming Konohamaru covered in juice. It was her, he pointed in a childish manner. Yumehime didn't do anything. Yumehime said as she looked up at Sakura with some of the cutest pair of cerulean blue orbs that caused Sakura to believe her over him. Grow up, don't blame others for your misfortunes. She said as she shook her head. Have fun with Sakura and Konohamaru, Yumehime-chan, Shizune said as she walked back in. Yumehime will, she cheered as she grabbed her backpack that was resting on the coffee table and dashed out of the front door before the other two. Shizune giggled as she handed Konohamaru a towel. Don't worry, I think she likes you. You're just easy for her to tease. Shizune said with a smile on her face. How you knew? Shizune merely smiled. But it is your fault that you are so easy to tease. She said as she walked off. What were you guys talking about? Sakura asked. Oh, nothing. Shizune replied as she exited the room. Okay. We should hurry up and catch up to her before she gets lost. Which would be a good thing. What was that? Nothing. As soon as the two stepped outside, they saw Yumehime waiting alongside the house wall with a large grin on her face. Just being outside again had quickly brightened her mood. All her short life had been spent in nature, and the sun's rays seemed to revitalize her stamina. Ready to go? Sakura asked, to which Yumehime nodded her head as the two began to head toward the hospital. Wait, you guys are leaving me behind. You only followed me to find Naruto, right? I told you and Shizune-chan told you as well that they were busy. So you no longer have a reason to follow me anymore. Yeah, but I'm kind of bored since I won't have anything to do until the third exam. You're just going to annoy the patient again at the hospital. No, I won't, I promise. Sakura crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes at him, just like Tsunade used to do to Naruto when he was younger. Suddenly something struck her like a bolt of lightning. Hinata is also working at the hospital today too, right? Yeah, but you already know that, why are you asking? I recently heard that Hanabi was also helping her out as well. Suddenly Konohamaru's face flashed a bright red, causing Yumehime to laugh out loud, while Sakura only wore a devilish grin. Knew it. That was the real reason why you were at the hospital. No way. I told you I was just trying to help out. Whatever, last I heard Hanabi was also volunteering to help out some of the academy students that will be taking their genin exams pretty soon, with a few ninjutsu and taijutsu lessons over at Field 10. Nani? How come I wasn't told of this? Oh, Sakura's grin grew even deeper. Don't get the wrong idea. Teaching is something that would interest me much more than hanging around the hospital all day. Yeah, well, we will be heading out now. Yumehime wants to go see the academy students too. Yumehime tugged on the bottom part of Sakura's skirt. Sakura sighed a little bit as she glanced back at Konohamaru. No, he instantly said, not even allowing her to ask the question. A vein popped up on her forehead as he made a silent gulp and backed up a little. I still have things to do at the hospital, and she would also enjoy herself more if she was around younger kids. But I'm sure you'll be more than willing to help me out. Even though her tone was kind and sweet, the dangerous amount of killer intent she was emitting told Konohamaru that it would be wise for him to comply with her demand. Okay, great. I will be checking up on things around 5, okay? Hi, he said in a tired tone. Come on Yumehime-chan, let's go. Hi, she sang as she grabbed his hand. For a second he thought this wouldn't be as bad as he thought it would be if she were going to behave like this for the rest of the day. It only took them several minutes to make it to Field 10, where Hanabi was already standing with about 12 academy students, sparring with one another in pairs of 2. There were also a few more supervising the training. How's it going, Hanabi-chan? Konohamaru shouted as he waved his hand in the air at her. Her typical Hyuga stoic expression shifted to one of annoyance as she realized who it was that was calling her name. What do you want? He seemed to brush that one off without a hint of hesitation. Why wasn't I told about these lessons? Since you were selected to be an instructor of the exams, they figured that it wouldn't be right to invite you here too. Which I was happy for, she said as she continued to glare at him. But I love doing this kind of stuff, he said with a cheerful expression on his face as he raised both of his hands. This was when he realized that Yumehime was no longer by his side. He began to scan his area looking for her. What are you looking for? Naruto's daughter. Why in hell did he let someone as irresponsible as you watch over her? Hey, I'm doing Sakura a favor, okay? Who is this kid? One of the others asked as both Konohamaru and Hanabi turned toward that direction. Yumehime was standing in between 2 students looking at them with a very curious expression on her face. Yumehime wants to know, why are you fighting? We are not fighting, we are sparring. This is a part of our training and a little chibi like you shouldn't get in our way. One of the students said as he glared down at her. Hey, don't be mean to her, the student he was sparring against yelled. Sparring? Yumehime wants to try. Yumehime does it a lot with her mama and papa. No way, I'm not in the mood to hear a baby cry. Yumehime won't cry, she shouted as she glared up at him. Yumehime. What are you doing? Get back over here, Konohamaru yelled. Yeah, listen to Konohamaru-senpai and get out of our way. No. Yumehime wants to try, she shouted back at him with her fist balled. Hanabi closed her eyes, which caused Konohamaru to think that she was beginning to get annoyed with the girl. Let's just humor her a bit. Maizo, go easy on her, she shouted to the student who had been arguing with Yumehime. Nani? Why do I have to? Because I said so, she yelled back with her fierce Hyuga glare that could scare almost anyone inexperienced to death, the students included. Hi, and if you hurt her badly I will kill you. She added, causing him to sigh even louder. How is it possible not to hurt her badly since she is 4 or something like that? The student thought as he crouched down in a defensive stance. Okay, you get the first attack. Hi. What do you think of Hanabi-chan? Konohamaru asked. He knew Yumehime was gifted, but highly doubted she was on genin level. Just watch. Yumehime reached around in her backpack and pulled out a water bottle. She opened the bottle and slung the water in the air, allowing it to rain down on them. What was that for? The student asked. Yumehime only giggled as she dashed quickly toward him a lot faster than anyone had expected and landed a heavy blow to his abdomen, knocking the breath out of him. On instinct he sent a violent backhand at her direction that caused everyone to gasp, hoping that she wouldn't be seriously injured. Konohamaru more than anyone else, since he would have to deal with an angry Sakura and an even angrier Naruto. But his hand only flowed smoothly through her body as it dispersed in a splash of water. The bunshin, he asked as his eyes told the story of just how shocked he was. The majority of the students there couldn't use any D level, except the bunch and know him being the only one who could do a little more, yet she had just performed level. While he was stunned with shock, the water quickly followed behind him and retook the shape of Yumehim as she leaped in the air and landed a side kick to the small of his back, sending him crashing to the ground. She then proceeded to use gravity to her advantage as she landed on top of his back, adding more to injury. He released a loud groan before he lost consciousness. Oh, Yumehim wants to keep playing. Papa and Mama can last a lot longer than this, she pouted as she punched the student in his back. She was oblivious to the fact that everyone around her was flabbergasted. What the hell did Naruto Nai-san teach her? Konohamaru asked no one as he was trying his hardest to pick his jaw off of the ground. Yumehim stood up and glanced over at him with a smile on her face. Want to play? She asked in such an innocent tone that it almost shed the fact that they were all thinking she was some kind of Bakemono offspring, which wasn't far from the truth given who her parents were. Nani, before he realized it, he was forced to back up quickly as water began to splash in his direction. The moment he took his eyes off her, she disappeared. Where'd she go? He shouted. Above you, Hanabi answered as her Byakugan activated. He was barely quick enough to fend off her foot as she landed on top of his forearm and perfectly balanced herself there with a playful grin on her face. Her body then burst into water as it splashed all over him. In the seconds of the commotion, she appeared behind him, sending a left foot to the back of his left knee, but he was quicker than she was as he slid his leg to right, just dodging the attack. Instead of staying on the offensive, she bounced back as quick as a Nico as she leaped into the trees. She thinks this is a game. Hanabi started with an unusual smile on her mask. And how is that going to help me calm her down? My neck is on the line here if something happens to her, you know. I'm more worried about our little chibi here than your body parts. Luckily she has found a very amusing play toy. Is that all I am now? He said in an exhausted tone. Hanabi laughed as he continued to search for the girl. Plus, I think she is more than capable of taking care of herself, judging by how she is dealing with us right now. I have to admit that her parents raised her to be quite the capable Kunoichi at such a young age. Maybe Nisama should have hooked up with that blonde baka after all, if this is how he raised his children. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Surprisingly so. Konohamaru sighed out loud again just before relaxing his stance, but that was what Yumehim was waiting for. He felt a hand grip the back of his leg and sling him hard against the ground. The hand was cold and very damp. Further observation proved that the hand was made completely of water and had sprouted up from the ground. Just how strong is she? He shouted as he fought to free himself. The patter of a dozen footsteps caused him to look up at the sight of several clones charging toward him. He finally set himself free and leaped up and began to engage the clones. He didn't know how high her pain tolerance was, so instead of going with full power, he lightly tapped the back of the neck of each one, hoping he could find the original. Unfortunately, all of them dropped to a puddle of water. Two more leaped out of a puddle behind him and finally connected with a chain of kicks and punches before he managed to fight them off too. Looks like she is getting the best of you. Hanabi said with her arms crossed. You're not going to help me get her under control. Didn't you already discover that this was also entertaining for me too? Yeah, but this is all at my expense. It is your job to babysit her, isn't it? Consider this a part of the mission that has been handed to you too. You are after all. Hanabi's usual cold tone proved that she had absolutely no intentions of helping him in this matter. He let out a loud growl as his frustration was starting to get the best of him. Okay, Yumehime-chan. Playtime is over. Come out before I get serious. He allowed a bit of his chakra to flare up, showing that he was meaning business. He wasn't sure if she could properly read chakra yet, but was positive that her parents had at least touched up on it since she knew how to perform such complicated things already. Suddenly Yumehime leaped down from one of the nearby trees with a large Naruto-like grin on her face as she had her arms crossed. Yumehime had fun, she cheered, causing Konohamaru to sweat drop and Hanabi to burst into a fit of laughter. I think I might adopt her as my own little Amato-chan. Hanabi said as she walked up to the girl. Unexpectedly, a large amount of chakra mixed with a monstrous amount of killer intent caused everyone, Yumehime included, to freeze right in their tracks. The source seemed to have come from the direction of the Forest of Death. What the hell was that? Konohamaru yelled as he somehow managed to take control of his emotion enough to break his body's trance. Mama, Yumehime shouted. Konohamaru sighed a little. He began to think that maybe she was a little normal, even he was scared for a second. It's okay, Yumehime-chan, we'll protect you if something were to happen. Hanabi said as she tried to comfort the child. No, Yumehime is not scared. Mama is hurting. Nani? Mama is hurting? Hanabi repeated the question in her state of confusion. Yumehime broke free from Hanabi's hold and began to slowly back up. What is it, Yumehime-chan? Hanabi asked, concerned about the girl. Stop her, Konohamaru yelled as something popped in his head. What are you talking about? It's obvious that she is already scared enough. If we don't stop her before he could finish his sentence, her body dissolved into a puddle of water. She just, Hanabi said, a little bit shocked. Too late. What do you know? Hanabi demanded as she glared at him. She mentioned her mom was hurting right after we felt that strange chakra. I think she is going to try to rescue her mom from whatever is going on. You mean to tell me that monstrous chakra was Yumehime-chan's mom? It explains a lot about her own strength, don't you think? She obviously has two freakishly strong parents who probably have been training her since she could walk, not to mention she had to inherit some of their gifts. I know that, Baka. This means she is most likely heading toward the Forest of Death. Think you can help me now? He asked with a mask of seriousness covering his face. She nodded her head since she felt a little bit of obligation to the girl that she wanted to adopt. Okay, see if you and Suni can track her down before she gets there. I have to tell Sakura and hope that she doesn't kill me. I'll take care of the kids. A third named Kito was added. The other three nodded as they quickly split up. Things were going fine at the hospital until that strange chakra sent everything into a hectic frenzy. Sakura was in charge of the hospital, and this was making her job all the more annoying and painstaking. The strange chakra had caused previously sealed wounds to reopen, normally calm traumatized patients to return to their anxiety attacks, and the babies in the nursery to wail. What in the world was that? Hinata asked Sakura as pools of sweat were literally pouring from her forehead. I don't know, but it wasn't a good thing. Suddenly Sakura caught a glimpse of Konohamaru charging up to her in the corner of her right eye and also noticed that Yumehime wasn't with him. What is it? This better be important because I really don't have the time for this right now. You felt it, right? That huge chakra. What do you know about that? Sakura demanded. That was Naruto's wife, according to Yumehime-chan. And where is she right now? Konohamaru's body slouched down in a pitiful pose as he shyly glanced at her. That's the problem. She dashed off to the Forest of the Death to rescue her mom. Hanabi and Suni went off to get her before she made it, but I doubt they will be able to catch her before she makes it there. How in hell can you let her run away? Sakura yelled as she lifted him by his collar. Well, she is surprisingly strong. She beat up one of the stronger kids from the academy in 3 hits in a spar and even gave me some trouble while thinking it was all a game. She knew several high levels. Still, she is only a little girl, and that place is deadly even for adults. And if that really was her mother, then there is no telling what is going on in there right now. That's why I came to tell you, he shouted. Hinata gently placed a hand on Sakura's shoulder. Sakura glanced over at her right before letting out a loud sigh, calming down, releasing him from her ironclad grip. My hands are tied here at the hospital. Go notify Shishu-sama and Shizune right now. They will be able to handle things. Konohamaru nodded as he left in a whirlwind of leaves. I'm sure my son and Suni-san will be able to get to her before anything happens. Hinata said, trying to comfort Sakura. Yeah, you're right. Let's take care of things here. 3. Yumehime knew that she was being trailed by the others, but for some reason she couldn't help but run to her mother. It was like something was pulling her to the forest as if it was her mother's own voice. She had been feeling it all day since her parents left that morning, it just wasn't as strong as it was now. Now it felt like something bad was going to happen to her parents if she didn't show up. She suddenly stopped right in front of the gate to the entrance of the Forest of Death. She didn't know the reason for her stop, maybe it was something just as strange as the thing that was calling her, telling her to go back. Mama, be okay, she said to herself as she decided to tread on. Yugito's condition had only slightly improved as she now rested quietly in Naruto's arms. The night was quiet and calming, a complete 360 from the aura it was emitting only a few hours ago. Naruto never would have imagined that those genin would have been forced to use the scroll, but he was glad that he gave it to them anyway. Yugito groaned in her sleep as she adjusted herself to a more comfortable position. He couldn't quite remember when was the last time the two of them had spent a night together like this. Ever since Yumehime had entered their world, their playfulness and alone time had dropped to an all-time low. Not that they cared as much since they both were crazy about their prodigy daughter, but they also both agreed that they couldn't keep moving around with her like they have been doing. It wouldn't prove to be a healthy environment for her to grow up in. Naruto glanced up at the pitch-black sky and released a tiring sigh. To say that he was in a hurry to find that artifact and get the hell out of this forest was an understatement. He didn't like seeing Yugito in this condition, nor did he feel comfortable leaving Yumehime alone for a long time. This was actually the first time they have been apart since her birth, and he has become a very doting father since then, a little too doting. The sudden shift in the wind caught his attention as if it was an explosion. Yugito seemed to have sensed it as well as she once again stirred in her sleep. Not wanting to wake her just yet since he had finally succeeded in calming her down, he quietly grabbed a kunai from the pouch that was tied to his leg with his free arm. After a few minutes of waiting, nothing happened after that, but it was obvious that someone was there. He had been through so many convert missions that he learned almost every method of tracing someone's presence, and this potential intruder had made one grave mistake, the failure to completely conceal their scent. Suddenly a quiet pinging noise was heard as Yugito instantly leaped backwards, while Naruto deflected the sharp object with his kunai, batting it against the tree. Yugito quickly threw a kunai of her own at the source of the attack, but whatever it was that attacked them was no longer there. The two of them stood motionless, allowing all of their five senses to react with their surroundings. Naruto sent a quick peek over at Yugito and noticed that her pupils were still in the shape of slits like a feline, which only served to heighten his feeling of urgency. As soon as he blinked she was gone, apparently she had caught on to the enemy's trace before he did. His right arm suddenly rose up on its own as he just barely guarded another attack from his right. He quickly spun around and sent a stiff kick to the chest of his attacker, sending him flying to the ground. Before he could take advantage of his opponent's failure, the figure disappeared in a dark mist. Whoever it was that was attacking them wasn't as simple as the genin they had run into earlier. The loud grunt noise was heard to the north of him, and Yugito instantly popped in his head. He quickly dashed forward and was almost caught by a knee to the forehead if he hadn't ducked the blow just in time. He quickly grabbed the knee and slung the owner into the large tree next to them. In the same motion he grabbed another kunai and slung it with his free hand to the right. He heard a loud thud sound followed by a body crashing to the ground. Yugito leaped out of nowhere and landed a kick to the figure that was standing right behind him and finished them off by tossing 3 shurikens into his throat before landing. Her breathing was very sporadic, it was easy to tell that she was struggling to contain herself. Within her was beginning to take control of her again. Naruto grabbed the neck of the person he had just slammed into the tree and motioned for Yugito to follow him as he took to the trees. He wasn't sure if there were more than 3, but the last thing he needed was the Nibi to make its second appearance. It was not telling what kind of damage Yugito's body was going through while fighting the beast back as she was battling her attackers. As soon as they reached a clearing he quickly dashed down, slamming his captive against the ground hard at the same time. "Who are you and why are you attacking us?" Naruto demanded as he heard Yugito land beside him. "Yama-Inu-sama sends his condolences for the loss of your daughter." The man said before biting his own tongue completely off. "What the hell do you just say to me?" Naruto yelled as he grabbed a man with both his hands and began to shake him furiously. It wasn't much longer until the man died of blood lost. It seemed that he had also used it to increase the amount of blood he would lose if forced to commit suicide in this method. Naruto released a loud howl as he slammed his fist into the dead man's face, shattering his skull. "Calm down, Naruto. This is just Yama-Inu playing mind games with us right now. Yumehime is with Tsunade and Shizu right now. And I can tell by just being near that old hag that she is strong enough to handle herself against the strongest of enemies." Naruto stared up at his wife and noticed that her orbs had finally returned to normal. She had managed to beat back within her to take care of her husband. That strength alone allowed Naruto to calm down. "Yeah, you're right, at least I hope you are." Naruto. Yugito shot him a glare that reminded him of his old days with Tsunade and Sakura beating the hell out of him. Yeah, we should get moving since you are already awake. But what about the mess you made?" "I made it." "You mean we?" He teased. "We'll just let the Anbu take care of that for now. I really want to get this done before he really does try something." He started just before leaping back to the trees in a flash with Yugito chasing after him. The Konoha Genin squad that Naruto and Yugito had run into earlier were still treading on in the forest with a newfound confidence thanks to experience of fighting 3-level shinobi and surviving to talk about it later with their sensei and family still fresh on their minds. Ryu, still very proud, was sulking over the fact that all of his originals failed against all 3 opponents. Actually, they just didn't fail, they were batted through like slow softballs at a home run derby. "By the long face," Ryu Aoi teased. "Would you stop calling me that already?" he yelled as he leaped in her face. "My bad for showing some sort of compassion to a lesser teammate," she stated as she turned her back to him and began to walk off, leaving him fuming. "One of these days I'm going to kill you, you know that. If you don't die from your stupidity first. I hate you a lot. Wouldn't have it any other way, Ryu." She giggled as she finished her sentence. "Come on guys, can we get alone for now?" Suzuka pleaded as she stood between them. "Sure thing, Suzuka. Don't make it seem like I'm the one causing problems," Ryu yelled as he caught up to the other two. The sudden sound of rustling caught all 3 of them off guard as they instantly tensed up. They all were beginning to hate this forest with a passion. But the last thing they expected was a little kid with long blonde hair crawling down to the small of her back and passing them in blinding speed. "What the hell was that?" Ryu asked as he pointed with a dumbfounded expression on his face. "The little girl," Suzuka answered. "No way. We have to catch up to her," Aoi yelled as she dashed after her. "Wait. This could be another trap. There's no way a little girl would be in this forest." "And you call me Baka?" Ryu yelled as he chased after Aoi, leaving Suzuka there by herself until she too decided that it was better to be with them than alone. It took Aoi nearly 10 minutes to catch up to the girl, not by choice though. Aoi was out of breath and about to give up on the chase until she noticed that the little girl was nowhere to be found. She stopped and placed her hands on both of her knees, trying to take in as much oxygen as she could in a short amount of time. "Why are you chasing Yumehime?" the little girl asked from a tree limb as she stared down at Aoi. "Orihime. is that your name? Yumahem, ask you a question first. Why are you chasing Yumahem? She reiterated with more force this time, which was a bit strange for Aoi to hear a threatening tone from a little child. Finally Ryu caught up to the two of them in the same shape, if not worse, than Aoi was. So where do they go? Aoi pointed up, causing Ryu to follow her eyes. She really is a little girl. What the hell? Yumahem is leaving, she yelled as she quickly stood up. Wait. We were only chasing after you because we were worried about you. Why are you in this forest by yourself? Yumahem paused for a second as she glared down at them, as if she was deciding something in her tiny head before turning back around. Yumahem doesn't have time to talk. She stated as she dashed off again. I said wait, Aoi yelled again as she leaped up in the tree chasing after her again. At this time Suzuka finally caught up and grabbed Ryu's arm. What is happening? I don't have a damn clue. Aoi is so enamored by that little girl. So she was real, I suppose. After a few minutes of chasing after her again, Aoi realized that this was no average girl, not to say she thought she was average before, thanks to her being able to get in this forest in the first place, and let's not even talk about the tree hopping. Aoi was about at her last straw when she suddenly decided to use one of her to create an ice dagger and launched it toward Yumahem. The dagger just barely missed but served its purpose, taking out the limb below her, causing her to fall down to the forest floor. Damn it, what was I thinking? Aoi yelled as she realized that she could actually seriously injure the girl, but nearly fell from the tree herself when she watched Yumahem land gracefully on her feet, almost like a Nico. The first thing the blonde did was glare up at her pursuer with the utmost animosity. Don't tell me this girl plans on fighting me. Aoi thought as she landed in front of her. Yumahem said she didn't have time for this. Mama is in trouble. Mama? Wait, who is your mama? Aoi tried to ask, but was forced to leap backward as a violent wave of water came crashing toward her. She glanced over at the blonde and noticed that she had just slung a bottle of water at her and turned it into a wave this powerful. Just who is this kid? Aoi thought as she just barely managed to escape. She instantly raised her left hand up as Yumahem leaped in the air and threw a sharp kick in her general direction. Aoi couldn't believe just how fast she was but wasn't about to allow herself to get bested by a little girl. She had worked too hard to gain the status of strongest genin in Konoha despite being a female. She grabbed Yumahem's leg when she was in the middle of her decline and pulled her toward her, but didn't expect her to counter by twisting in air and landing a heavy kick to Aoi's face, sending her tilting backwards. Yumahem did another flip in the air, landing on her feet in a pouncing position as she used her legs to thrust her into Aoi's body, sending her crashing to the ground. Yumahem then used Aoi's body as a springboard, leaping off of her back into the air before landing once again gracefully on her feet. As soon as Yumahem's feet had solid footing on the ground, a wave of ice encased her feet, leaving her stuck to the ground long enough for Aoi to rebound and throw a punch at the girl's face, but Yumahem at the last minute dispersed in a small splash of water. Aoi quickly swung back and grabbed Yumahem, who was instantly behind her, and slammed her into the ground. The cold grip of Aoi's hand burned Yumahem's skin as she tried to fight her way free. With her free hand she grabbed another water bottle from her backpack and slammed it against the ground hard enough to cause it to burst. Suddenly 5 Yumahems formed from the water and began to attack Aoi at once. Aoi's hand continues to freeze everything it touches, making it very easy to fend off the Bushin's attacks. Yumahem was starting to get a little frustrated since this was the first person besides her parents to hold her back this much. She leaped backwards until she was standing side by side with her last clone as the two suddenly grabbed hands. The clone then returned to its original form as it began to cover Yumahem. Aoi didn't know what she was doing, but she wasn't about to let her finish it, but as soon as she reached the girl she noticed a great difference than before. The little girl now stood at her height with piercing silver eyes and hair. Yumahem suddenly placed her hands in the Tora seal, quickly shifting to the Oushi, and then ending with the seal right before yelling, Mizuryu Kasei. Aoi was more than unfamiliar with this and didn't quite know what to expect at first until she noticed that the girl's speed had nearly doubled as Yumahem was now behind Aoi once again. Aoi quickly sent a swift kick to her head, but Yumahem easily caught it and twisted it in a very violent method, causing Aoi to shriek out in pain. Yumahem then pushed on her foot, applying more pressure to it before she kicked the leg that Aoi was placing all her weight on, causing her to crash to the ground. Not only had she increased her speed but her power as well had doubled. This was taught to her by both her parents and was her last line of defense against strong opponents like Aoi. This was the first time she used it against someone else other than her mother though. Her mother had warned her each time that this would cause a great strain to her body since it wasn't used to maintaining a constant flow of chakra for a long period of time. That was a feat that not many could accomplish properly. "Who is Shiryu?" asked Suzuka, and he finally arrived at the scene to see the two battling each other. "I think it's the little girl from before." Suzuka answered. "See? I knew it was a trap. And she always called me Baka." "Ha. Serves her right. We should help her," Suzuka said softly. "No," Aoi yelled as she forced herself back to her feet. Stay out of this one, okay? She pleaded as she returned her attention to the girl in front of her. Aoi could tell that Yumehime was getting even more agitated now that her two teammates had finally caught up. She used that to gauge the girl's true strength and realized that the strain she had just used could have been her last resort. She would most likely stay defensive now and look for a quick way to escape. But that wasn't what Aoi wanted. She knew that the girl was only fighting because she considered them a threat, and for some reason she couldn't help but to feel a strong resemblance between this girl and Uzumaki Naruto. Then it suddenly hit her, Yumehime had mentioned her mother earlier like she was searching for her. She quickly began to put two and two together. Yumehime. Is your name Daddy's name Naruto? Yumehime froze in place as her guard instantly fell. That distraction caused the water to lose its form as it poured to the ground like a mini waterfall, revealing the original shape of the little blonde girl from before. How do you know Papa's name? Nani, Ryu shouted as he fell to the ground with shock. Aoi began to walk toward Yumehime, who began to back up quickly with a very panicked expression on her face. With her strongest gone, she had nothing else to fend off the female with, and she didn't know what to do. Wait, I won't hurt you, okay? I just want to make sure you're okay. Your father actually saved our lives earlier. And I'm sure your mother is safe. But Yumehime tried to say as fear began to take control of her. That is until Suzuka wrapped her gentle arms around her, embracing her from behind. It's okay, little one. Suzuka said in a calm voice. Yumehime felt her fear disperse as her consciousness began to fade. Her body was exhausted from the strain she had placed on it. Her father had always warned her not to go all out since it was too much for her body to handle. 3. When Yumehime came to, she noticed that someone was carrying her body. A streak of fear struck deep in her heart as she instantly fought to free herself from her captors. But she was once again met with reassuring hands as Suzuka hugged her from behind. We won't hurt you, Yumehime-chan. Hug was the only thing Yumehime could say in her fit of confusion. She glanced to her right and noticed the blue girl that she was fighting earlier and tensed up. Aoi giggled a little as she shook her head. Don't worry, the fight's over. You can relax now. Aoi said as she smiled. Yumehime stared at her for a few seconds before hopping off of Ryu's back. Where are you taking Yumehime? She asked as she tried to get a grasp on her location. Nowhere in particular, we are just taking you with us in the case that we run into your parents again. Unfortunately, we can't take you back to the village since we are in the middle of a very important exam. Exam? Yumehime asked in a method that both Aoi and Suzuka found very cute, to the point of squealing. Ryu, on the other hand, was annoyed as usual. The three of them had argued about what to do with her for about 30 minutes, with Ryu the only one wanting to just leave her to fend for herself. He didn't want to have any more distractions since they were yet to find their second scroll and they only had one day left. Yeah, it's a test to determine if we can become one. Suzuka answered. Suzuka was probably the one who was the most enamored with the child, as she instantly took on the role of the big sister that was usually played by Aoi when it came to her. Yumehime doesn't understand. She said as she placed her hand behind her head and made a goofy smile that was identical to the one that they saw Naruto wear. She's definitely his child, they all said in unison. Yumehime only gave them another confused look as she shrugged it off. Yumehime-chan, why are you looking for your mother? Suzuka asked. Yumehime felt Mama's pain. Yumehime can help heal her. Yumehime said as her face fell to a depressed expression. Don't worry, like Aoi-san said, your mother is okay. I can promise you. Suzuka declared with a bright smile on her face that matched the child's earlier one in brilliance. How come you're so strong, Yumehime? I still can't believe you gave me so much trouble. My ankle is still hurting from that one move you did. Aoi asked as she pointed down to her sore foot. Omen. Yumehime said as she placed both of her hands together and bowed. Wow, she is even more intelligent than Baka. Ryu, Aoi cheered. Boy, Ryu yelled as balled his fist. Aoi only laughed as she waved her hands. Mama and Papa taught Yumehime a lot of things. Yumehime answered with a smile on her face. This was her first real time interacting with other kids and she was actually enjoying herself. How old are you? Suzuka asked. She answered by holding up her right hand, spreading all 5 of her fingers. 5? That's amazing, Aoi exclaimed. Baka. You're too loud. Ryu yelled. Suddenly the atmosphere grew heavy as the air around them became very thick and mucky. Ryu made a grunt noise as he grabbed a kunai from his forehead protector and began to scan the area. Aoi did the same while Suzuka stepped in front of Yumehime, guarding her from anything. Even Yumehime's expression had shifted to one of caution. The loud bang was heard as the air literally ignited into a rage of flames surrounding them at every turn. What now? Ryu yelled as quickly pulled out several of his special shuriken and slung them in all directions in the sky before using the same as before, causing all of them to explode in a blanket on fire. What the hell is wrong with you? Was it not hot enough already for you? Aoi yelled. Baka, this is our cover so that we can escape. I don't know about you, but I'm not in the mood right now to fight when I have this kid hovering around my feet. Plus, I'm not going to be the one to explain to her dad why she was killed in the middle of a battle. Ryu stated. He's right, Aoi-san. We can't fight here while we have Yumehime-chan with us. I guess you do have a brain and that thick excuse for a skull you have there. Shut it. The four of them began to run, hoping to escape whoever it was that was trying to attack them now, but they were stopped right in their paths by a rain of kunai, nearly taking out Ryu in the process. What the hell, Ryu shouted as he leaped backwards. You didn't think that little ploy of yours would save you now, didn't you? A female voice asked from a hidden location. Another rain of kunai, this time covered in flames, was sent at them. Yumehime quickly grabbed another water bottle from her backpack, opening it in the process, and flung it in the air, causing the water to spread in every direction. Aoi used the same she used on Yumehime earlier and touched the water with her left hand, causing ice to spread over them, creating a temporary shield. The diversion served its purpose, allowing them enough time to escape the flames and kunai that continued to fly at them. The sudden pulse of chakra caught Yumehime's attention, causing her to stop instantly. It wasn't for a few seconds later that Suzuka realized that Yumehime was running alongside them. She turned to see Yumehime dashed off in the other direction. Wait, Orihime-chan, Suzuka yelled as she chased after her. Aoi and Ryu stopped as well when they heard Suzuka's voice. I knew that damn kid would only bring trouble to us. Ryu grunted as he and Aoi ran after Suzuka. Before Yumehime had even realized it, she was standing in the middle of a small lake, the source of the strong chakra source that was constantly resonating within her. What are you doing, Yumehime-chan? Suzuka asked as she finally caught up to the girl. Do you feel what Yumehime feels? She asked as she slowly turned around with a blank expression on her face that frightened Suzuka. What are you talking about, Yumehime-chan? The water began to vibrate in the center where Yumehime was standing, causing Suzuka to fear the worst, but for some reason she couldn't move from her spot. It almost felt like something was holding her in place. Suddenly the water exploded around Yumehime, causing Suzuka to scream out as a large shockwave of chakra sent her flying backwards. As the water cleared, Yumehime was still standing in the center, untouched by the water. Chakra seemed to be leaking out of body as her once vibrant azure eyes were now pale blue. As Suzuka took a closer look, she noticed one major difference than before. In her hands were two cerulean kusarigama with its cobalt-shaded chains wrapped around each wrist. I was sent to kill the kid, and here I found something even better. The voice from before said, still hidden from sight. Naruto was in the middle of refilling his canteen when suddenly both his Namikaze and Kagakasai began to pulsate madly to the point where they dispersed him. Yugito quickly came running toward Naruto. Are yours acting up as well? She questioned. Naruto only nodded his head. All of a sudden a violent wave of chakra was sent through the area, causing them to stumble a little bit as the water around them literally erupted like a volcano. They both shouted at the same time as they instantly recognized the chakra surge. Suzuka couldn't believe the immense amount of chakra that the young blonde was emitting from her tiny body, not to mention the magical appearance of the two weapons that she now wielded. She knew that Yumehime was strong, but her predictions didn't even hold a candle to what she was feeling right now. She called out to the girl as she began to slowly walk toward her. Yumehime slowly gazed over at the source of the voice that called out to her. Her pale blue eyes looked deprived of all life as her pupils were nowhere to be seen. Suzuka was forced to stop in her tracks as her body began to scream for her to get away. There was something wrong with the situation, something that just didn't feel right to her. Yumehime. What's wrong? She called out again, hoping to get some kind of response from this girl that had just become her own. But the response she got was something that she didn't expect to happen. She suddenly found herself ducking as one of the chain sickles Yumehime was wielding slashed at her head. As she glanced up, she managed to put both of her arms up just in time to fend off a right kick aimed for her lowered head. Suzuka quickly dashed backwards, exiting the water and returning to land, hoping to give herself a better chance at defending. She had just learned from Ino how to stand on water, but it was still a task to move around, let alone fight on it. Not saying that she was actually looking forward to engaging the possessed girl. Yumehime quickly tugged on the chain of the kusarigama in her right hand, allowing it to pull back like a snake being called back by its master. A second look from Suzuka, and she noticed that both weapons were moving as if they had a will of their own. She began to deduce that those weapons were the cause of Yumehime's sudden hostile change. She reached down into her pouch and pulled out two kunai. She knew what she had to do even if she was not really up to the challenge. Aoi had trouble with her when she was fighting with everything she had earlier. Now with those weapons increasing her chakra output and fighting efficiency, this was looking to be a helpless situation. Man, I wish Aoi-san was here, she thought as she gripped the handle of her kunai until her knuckles went white. The emotionally deprived mask of Yumehime glared at Suzuka for a very short second before disappearing into the water around them. Suzuka began to search the area hoping to gain a trace of her chakra when she realized that there was no need for that. She had allowed the dire situation to dictate her emotions and thoughts, causing her to forget all that she had learned from her sensei and parents. Gantai. She released a chakra pulse of her own, noticeably minute compared to Yumahim's, but its purpose was only to allow her sixth sense to gain insight on her surroundings. Every single living thing began to pulsate, allowing her to know everything that was around her and their whereabouts. She could sense their life force and their attention. She quickly found the whereabouts of Yumahim and a second, more malicious, person hiding in the trees. No doubt their attacker from earlier. She knew that she would have to finish this quickly before things got out of control. She may or may not be on par with the current Yumahim, but the second person was leagues above her, and she wouldn't be able to save Orihim if he were to interfere. A loud explosion occurred in the center of the lake as two dragons erupted from it as they tangled and intertwined around each other in Suzuka's direction. Suzuka was forced to use the second part of her as a second pulse of chakra was sent through in the same wave as the first, but this one allowed her to control the movements of the life forces around her, and the two dragons seemed to have a life force of their own. Gantai. Undo Seijo. She waved her right hand to the side, forcing the dragon on the right to crash to her side. She then did the same thing with her left hand, causing the second dragon to do the same. The monstrous amount of water splashed violently against the ground as Suzuka leaped into the air just in time as she landed on a tree limb, dodging most of the wave. She watched down as the two Kusurigama from earlier that were hidden in each dragon snaked back into the water. Yumahim suddenly leaped out of the center of the water as a large tsunami followed behind her. She unleashed a vicious amount of punches and kicks in Suzuka's direction. But with Suzuka's Gantai still in effect, each of the attacks was being pushed to the side just as quickly as they were thrown, but Suzuka was having a hard time keeping up with the young blonde's increasing speed as each blow got closer and closer. Suzuka decided to take a quick glance at Yumahim's face and saw that it was void of all emotion. It looked almost like she was defending herself from a robot, a killing machine. That brief moment proved to be the one mistake that she would make, since it allowed her concentration to slip just enough to cause her to be on the receiving end of the powerful blow to the face, cracking the right side of her jaw as she was sent crashing toward the ground. She felt a chain wrap around her left ankle as she was in the middle of her descent. The chain began to twist tightly, cutting off all circulation to her foot as she felt a violent tug from the top, causing her plet to stop mid-fall and adding to the increasing injury of her leg. She tried to fight free, but a second chain began to wrap around her neck in similar fashion. As she continued to struggle, the chain's grip continued to increase until two random kunai stabbed through the chains, setting her free and allowing her body to fall once again. Right before her body met with the ground, she was caught by two familiar arms as she glanced up to their owner. Aoi-sen, she cheered. Yo Aoi nodded with a smile on her face. She glanced up to see Ryu was the one to cut her free. He landed beside them with a very serious expression on his face. That damn is really starting to piss me off, he growled as he pulled out two of his special kunai and glared up at Yumahim, who stared down at them with the same emotionless mask as before. No. Don't agitate her anymore. This is not her fault, those weird weapons are controlling her. Suzuka protested as she tried to stand up, but her left foot had yet to recover from the amount of damage it had received. Then why in hell does she have them? Ryu shouted as he continued to glower. I don't know. They just showed up when she ran into the lake. That artifact is too strong for her to handle. The eerie female voice from earlier said as the three turned around at the same time to see whom it was. The woman was clad in a dark red velvet cloak that covered her shoulders and back. She was wearing standard black shinobi soldier pants that sported several pouches on each thigh and a black vest. Her fiery red hair was tied back in a tight bun as her seductive scarlet eyes stared at the genin. Who are you? Aoi asked as she tensed up. They call me Shinku, but that will be the only thing you'll be allowed to know, since the rest will be pointless. And why is that? Ryu demanded as he turned all his attention and kunai toward her. Now, that's a stupid question with a simple answer. She plans to kill us. Aoi stated as she scowled at the woman. Bingo, along with the princess up there too. She pointed up in the tree toward Yumahim. Why are you after her too? Suzuka asked. I already told you that everything else is pointless for you to know, since you'll be dead anyway. Kids these days, they are just too slow for their own good. I think you might be right about that, but wrong about something else. Another voice spoke as the rain of kunai forced Shinku to leap backwards to dodge the attack. She glanced up to see Yugito land right in front of her as Naruto appeared behind Yumahim, grabbing her and pulling the artifacts from her hands. In return, she fainted into his arms. I guess I got so caught up in watching your daughter fight that genin over there that I forgot all about finishing my job before you two showed up. I guess I will just have to take care of all of you and triple the amount I was originally offered. She spoke nonchalantly. I guess your employer didn't tell you how dangerous we were? Yugito questioned. Oh, he did, but people tend to over-exaggerate at times when they are forced to deal with things that are uncommon to them. That statement seemed to piss off Yugito more than the fact that she was hired to kill her daughter. She was always the temperamental one of the couple. Even Naruto at times had to tiptoe around her when she was in one of her moods. Naruto, being her husband and the closest person to her, knew exactly what button the mercenary had just pushed. "I think you should run now." Naruto said as he glared down at her from the top of the tree with his daughter in his arms bridal style. "And why is that?" Shinku asked in a sarcastic tone. "Now that is a stupid question with a simple answer." Yugito spoke with a sinister smirk on her face as her facial traits began to morph back to her feral Nico-like ones. Naruto noticed this change and cursed under his breath as he knew that she was going to be a headache for him to deal with after the fight if Nibi and her weren't satisfied after this. Without any warning, Yugito was in Shinku's face, unloading several heavy blows to it in her stomach before finishing off the combo with a roundhouse kick to her chin, sending her flying into the air. With movements quicker than the time it took for a second to pass, Yugito was already in the air as she landed an axe kick to the merc's head, sending her crashing head first into the ground. Shinku spat out a large blob of blood as she quickly retreated backwards, trying to gain a needed break from the fight, but Yugito was already back in her space. As soon as she reached, her limbs started another barrage of punches and kicks to her battered body. All three of the genin's eyes were almost peeled past their limits as they couldn't believe just how fast this kunoichi was. Naruto only sighed as he watched the onslaught. Yugito always surpassed him in taijutsu and fell behind him in chakra output and ninjutsu. Like he said before, she was not a person he really wanted to fight in a serious match since her speed would make it troublesome for him to get off in time. But because of their many spars over the years, he learned how to fire off them at such alarming speeds that at times he didn't even need the use of hand seals to control the amount of chakra needed to perform some of his dot. Shinku couldn't believe just how fast and strong this woman was. Every fiber in her body ached down to its core as each blow shattered several bones until the final attack was a heavy knee to her already shattered chin, sending her back into the air. This time she was not going to allow herself to fall victim to the same attack as before as she shot an invisible string into the tree from her wrist. She quickly pulled her way out of the demoness's path of destruction. Now safely in one of the many tall trees in this forest, she set her plans in motion for a counter-attack. Even though she knew it would be wiser for her to escape while she could since she had greatly underestimated the duo, the stubborn part of her refused to allow this to be the end of the fight. At least it was what she considered it, even though she didn't even get a kick in. She quickly shot several threads of invisible wire throughout the trees that surrounded Yugito as the woman searched for her prey, literally licking her chops. When she noticed the wire, it was already too late. The next thing everybody knew, the entire area was set ablaze just like before, but this time the flames were much more violent and fearsome. Everything in the area was scorched in the searing flames as the heat began to make it nearly impossible to breathe thanks to the immense amount of smoke that was clogging up the area. Everyone but Naruto was worried about the safety of the blonde kunoichi, who was standing right in the middle of the explosion when the flames went crazy. A loud cackle was heard over the thunderous crashes from the trees that fell victim to the terrible flames. Serves that witch right. Now it's time for the rest of you to feel the same agony that she feels. I really hope you don't think this is over already. Naruto spoke out loud as he shrugged off the woman's laughter. He knew better than anyone else just how strong Yugito was, and fire also just happened to be one of the kunoichi's elemental affinities. As if it was planned, the flames in the middle swirled up in a tornado-like fashion as the blonde kunoichi leaped out of the inferno with a trail of fire following behind her. The look on Shinku's face was one of absolute shock. She couldn't believe that anyone could survive such an attack. She had literally pooled all of her chakra into that one attack, and the entire section of the forest that they were in showed the proof of this. Why was this woman still alive? Just who was she and how could she be this strong? She stole a quick glance at the blonde's husband and noticed that he had this all-knowing look on his face, as if he had already expected this. The fleeting thoughts crossed her mind that even if she had succeeded in defeating this woman here, she still would have to deal with her spouse, who was equally, if not the stronger of the couple. She began to curse her obsession with dangerous jobs, since this one proved to be the most dangerous one of all. And here she thought that this was going to be a piece of cake, despite what the man who hired her stated. He was very specific about finishing the mission before the parents showed up, or she would be forced to retreat or die. She thought it was all just overblown by weak politicians who were used to using their money to win people and not their fist, but boy, was she ever wrong. Maybe next time you will take your employer's advice, Yugito stated, unharmed by the ocean of flames that had just engulfed her. Hell, it looked like it had actually made her even stronger than before, judging by the way she was standing on the limb right in front of Shinku. Maybe you're right. Shinku said as she smirked. Despite the intense pain she was undergoing, she still felt a sense of pride to see a kunoichi this strong and not a slave to her male counterpart. But now wasn't the time to admire her opponent's state. She had to escape or things would end up with her death, a fate that she was definitely not ready for just yet. She still had things to settle. How about we call it your victory and I go about my merry way, okay, she said in a sarcastic but pleading tone. Are you telling me that the person who was hired to kill my only precious daughter and accepted the job, not to mention look down on me and my husband, is asking for her life to be spared? Yugito spat out as her eyes narrowed at the woman. Shinku only smiled. Yup. Yugito made a very unladylike grunt as she disappeared in a burst of flames, just to appear behind the mercenary, landing a bone shatter knee to the dead center of her back, causing her to plummet to the ground. Yugito leaped down after her, ready to land the finishing blow to the woman's back when she felt someone's hand grab her arm and instantly realized that only one person would be brave enough to do such a thing during this time. Why are you stopping me? She yelled as she pushed Naruto off of her in midair, causing the two to land several yards apart from each other. Is this you or is this Nibi? Screaming for blood, he questioned. During her last attack, he had quickly handed Yumehime to Aoi and moved in to stop Yugito. Was it you who shattered that man's skull when he mentioned Yumehime's death, or the Kyuubi? She spat back in a frustrated tone as she glared up at him. The words Nibi and Kyuubi were somewhat foreign to the genin, but hearing that Naruto had literally shattered a man's skull sent chills up and down their spines as they gawked at the shinobi in question. Naruto just sighed as he shook his head. He knew this was going to be a headache for him. He was hoping that she wouldn't act this way, but he also knew that this was pointless to hope for when it came to her. Look, are you telling me to let her live after she threatened our child's life? No. He tried to push out, but Yugito pushed on. Then what the hell are you stopping me for? If she had been the one to attack us earlier, you would have killed her yourself. So what's the problem now? There was one major difference between then and now. Naruto stated as he closed his eyes trying to conceal his annoyance. And that is, I had already got all of the information I could out of him. I would like to question her about Yama Inu before we decide what exactly we should do with her. Shinku asked as she tried to pick herself off of the ground. What do you mean who? He was the one who hired you. Yugito stated as she stalked up to the woman and stomped her left hand. Ouch. Which, chill with that, okay. And an old nonsense named Ayanok was the one who hired me. I don't know who the hell is this Yama Inu nonsense you're talking about, she shouted as she gripped her broken hand with the other. Yugito stomped down on her left foot and snared at her. Is that true? You didn't have to stomp my foot to ask that. And yes, it is, Shinku yelled back as the pain was beginning to get the better of her. Where was it that you met this ink? Naruto asked as he placed his hand on Yugito's shoulder. At this point, he could tell that he was beginning to take control over her as its violent methods were beginning to show. She never normally acted this way no matter how angry she was. She was always the calmer one of the two, but the situation seemed to swap their positions. She glared up at him before allowing herself to retreat for the moment, realizing that he was right about Nibi, since she could hear his voice in the back of her consciousness, screaming for her to take this woman's head. Along the border of Tsuchi no Kuni. She easily compiled, hoping that the calmer of the couple would be her savior here. I see, and what exactly were your orders? To kill Uzumaki Yumehime while she was separated from her parents in Konoha and quickly escape back to the village of Ushiwaka, 5 miles past the country's borders. He said not to show up if I failed and that he would know if I did or not and warned me to stay away from you too. So this leaves us practically nowhere. Naruto sighed. If that is all, then how in hell do you know about the artifacts? Yugito demanded as she glared at the woman. Naruto's eyes widened as that fact had escaped his mind and now he too was interested in her answer to this one. Don't tell me you guys think you're the only ones who know about the artifacts. It just so happens that I have been taking random missions like these in order to find my old sensei that abandoned me, all thanks to these damn artifacts. I thought that if I could take that artifact from the girl, I mean your daughter, and that it would lead me one step closer to his whereabouts. What was your sensei's name? Naruto asked. Kazuchi, but why is that important? Don't tell me you know where he is, she speculated as her face lit up despite the pain she was going through. No, I thought that maybe I'd run into him, but I don't recognize that name at all. Naruto stated as Shinku's facial expression fell into a semi-depressing state as the glimmer of hope she had to finally find her sensei disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. Okay, now that you're done questioning her, what now? Yugito demanded. She did attack shinobi from Konohagakure, he said as he glanced over at the 3 genin that were staring at them in silence. It would be best to leave her up to them. Shinku released a huge sigh of relief as she finally relaxed. Even though she did attack Konoha shinobi on their own territory, she had a better chance of surviving with them than if he had let his wife have another go at her. Several chakra sources were felt in the distance that caused Naruto's headache to increase tenfold. But he too was relieved that it was only Sakura, Konohamaru, and a couple of Anbu. What's going on here? Where's Yumehime? Sakura asked, as panic was clearly evident on her face. Naruto merely nodded over to the right where Aoi was as she carried his daughter on her back, piggyback style. She felt that Yugito-san was in trouble and tried to rescue her. Suzuka finally spoke up, causing everyone to give her their attention. Then she found these strange weapons that seemed to possess her, and this woman showed up and attacked us, but Naruto's son and his wife showed up and saved us. Sakura glanced over at her former teammate and saw him nod, letting her know that this all was true. She finally released a breath that she was probably holding back for who knows how long. "I'm glad that she's okay," Konohamaru said, as he too was happy that things didn't turn out to be worse for different reasons from Sakura, of course. Sakura ordered the Anbu to take Yumehime and Shinku to the hospital, but Yugito refused to allow them to touch her daughter, as she in return ordered her to show her the way to the hospital. She wasn't ready just yet to trust her daughter to someone else, and her nerves were still on edge thanks to the Bijuu's restlessness. The team of genin were also forced to follow, since the injuries Suzuka had received were too much for her to continue on with the exams, since it was a requirement that all three succeeded to the next stage. Sakura chose to stay behind and try to catch up with her former teammate, since things had finally calmed down to a point where she could properly relax again. So that weapon your daughter found, it still was a strange thing to her. She never foresaw Naruto to be a father at this age, and a mature one at that. Was the artifact that you two were looking for? Yeah, unfortunately so. Naruto started with a frustrated look on his face that did not go unnoticed by his pink-haired friend. What's wrong? I didn't plan for her to get involved in this hunt, not to mention that the artifact that has attached itself to her seemed to be too much for her to control. Can't you just use it yourself? According to what we have learned so far, the weapons only work for the ones that they choose, but before this, we also thought that they only reacted to the chakra of the dot. This just further proves how much we do not know about these weapons. Then why are you after them so much? Because the man that is also searching for these weapons is someone who will place everyone in danger if he was ever allowed to harness their power. Naruto stated in a serious tone that Sakura was definitely not used to seeing. She was still used to the younger, loudmouth, dim-witted, but lovable Naruto she grew up with. I see. So, what is your plan now that you have what you were looking for in Konoha? I don't know. Both Yugito and I feel that we do need to find a place to settle down until Yumehime is of proper age. The line of work we do is not a safe and healthy environment for her to grow up in. I agree, no offense. None taken. He chuckled. Suddenly the air around them grew thick as they could feel the murderous intent of someone watching them from a distance. Naruto allowed his chakra to flare up as he quickly began to scan the area as Sakura began to slip on her battle gloves. A dark figure flashed right in front of them, causing both to tense up until they realized who it was. Sakura's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets as Naruto's expression shifted to a deep scowl. Sasuke. Naruto said in an emotionless tone. Naruto. Sasuke started matching his former teammate's tone. Sakura's heartbeat had slowed down to a small crawl as she watched the two men who had been like brothers to her stare each other down. This was almost the scene she had dreamed of for many nights, minus the animosity of course. You couldn't describe how badly she had missed her two teammates and how badly she wished for both of them to be back on good terms. The revival of Team 7 would mark the happiest point in her life. Even though she still had some fleeting feelings toward her childhood crush, she had long outgrown that childish fangirl side of her as her maturity began to kick in. She no longer knew why she was so interested in the Uchiha besides his looks. Suddenly reality dawned on her as she realized how thick the atmosphere was between the three of them. It was obvious that their little reunion was treading on thin ice, as the slightest move could set off either Naruto or Sasuke. Man, has Kakashi-sensei let this village go to hell? It seems any nonsense can walk right in and out as he pleases now. Naruto stated, as he never took his eyes off his eternal rival. No pun intended. At least we agree on one thing, he retorted with his usual arrogant smirk on his face. So, what the hell are you doing back in the village then? I would like to ask you the same thing, dope. What? Are you trying to test my patience right now? There is nothing to test when it comes to what is already known. Then say it again, and we will see who is the dope in this group. Naruto spat as his cerulean orbs flashed a scarlet red for a second. Dope. Within that second, two kunai were plunged in both shinobi as blood dripped from their chest in the heart area. They both had moved so fast that Sakura couldn't keep up. You actually tried to kill me. Sasuke said as he spat up blood. Suddenly both shinobi disappeared in a dark cloud of smoke. You've gotten a little better, I see. Sasuke said as he reappeared on a limb of a tree about 2 yards away from where he originally was. I was holding back. My daughter could have killed you at that speed. Naruto spat as he too was standing in a tree several yards back. But back to my question, why the hell are you here? As if I would need to tell you anything. We can always do this the hard way, you know. The only problem with that is the fact that you won't end up walking away from this village again, or walking at all for that matter. I see over the years your big mouth hasn't changed about you. Sasuke said in a stoic tone as his eyes shifted to their crimson Sharingan form. But you won't even land a finger on me, dope. Naruto literally growled as the wind around them began to pick up. Within the time it took Sakura to blink, he was gone. Sasuke had just barely enough time to unsheath his Kusanagi as it collided with Naruto's kamikaze. Sasuke was temporarily left stunned thanks to the fact that he had gravely underestimated the blonde's speed. The moment he zoned out allowed Naruto to land a roundhouse kick to the right side of his face, knocking him out of the tree. So much for not being able to touch you, huh? Sasuke quickly caught his balance landing on both feet but was forced to evade as Naruto was already in his face, slashing his kamikaze in the direction of his neck. Sasuke tilted backwards, allowing the blade to swing past him, and, in the same motion, he lifted his right foot, connecting with the bottom of Naruto's chin and sending him floating in the air. Sasuke quickly carried on with the attack but was forced to back up as Naruto quickly recovered and turned his temporary moment of levitation into an axe kick. Sasuke lifted his Kusanagi using it as a shield to fend off Naruto's attack, grabbed his ankle and slung him hard toward the ground. Naruto twisted in mid-fall and used his momentum combined with Sasuke's strength to flip the Uchiha in the air and onto the ground. Sasuke quickly rebounded as he landed on his feet but noticed that the blonde was gone. He glanced over at Sakura but was forced to duck as Naruto's blade slashed right over his head. Sasuke took advantage of his position and performed a sweep kick, taking Naruto off his feet and swooping in to stab him in the chest. At the last second, Naruto reached up and grabbed the hilt of Kusanagi and pushed it up, causing it to thrust into Sasuke's chest and pushing him backwards. Naruto then launched a bicycle kick against Sasuke's chest and somersaulted in the air, before taking another swipe at Sasuke's head. Sasuke quickly countered with his blade, pushing Naruto back a little. The two paused for a second as they entered a fierce staring contest. Naruto slowly entered a kendo stance which Sasuke began to mimic. As if a referee yelled a silent go, the two were dashing toward each other in a blinding show of speed. The two locked horns at the center as the sounds of a million clinks and clanks were heard, quickly followed by a display of firework-like sparks. Sasuke, all of a sudden, leaped backwards and slung a barrage of shurikens. Naruto placed both hands on his kamikaze and swiped in their direction, creating a wave of wind that shot them back to their owner. In the gap of time that Naruto had taken his eyes off Sasuke to push back the shurikens, Sasuke had managed to enter the blind side of him and was in mid-swing when Naruto quickly unsheathed his Kagakusai and deflected his attack from behind him. He quickly spun around and took a swipe at his feet, trying to limit his movement enough for him to finish this fight off. Sasuke leaped over the first swipe from Kagakusai, but was just barely able to protect himself when Naruto continued to spin, attacking a second time with kamikaze. "That is enough," Sakura suddenly yelled as both glanced up to notice that she was in the air zooming toward them. The two quickly evaded as she came down, slamming her fist into the ground so hard the earth began to shake like an earthquake. Both Nukenin watched in amazement as the ground caved in under her power, creating a crater about 10 yards wide in her wake. At the bottom of this crater was a very pissed-off pink-haired Kunoichi who was glaring at both of them. They both had gravely underestimated her as well. Even though they were focusing on each other, their senses should have been high enough to pick up on any attack coming from outsiders, but both of them failed to notice her until she yelled at them. If she hadn't done so, then they both would have most likely been lying under her right now. "I see Naruto isn't the only one who has improved over the years," Sasuke said in an annoyed tone. "You two haven't seen each other in several years, and the first thing you do is try to kill each other," she yelled. Naruto pointed his kamikaze at her with a fierce glare on his face. "Don't interrupt us, Sakura-chan. Next time I don't know if I'll be able to hold myself back," he declared. Sakura was a little bit taken aback by this statement but stood her ground. The last thing she wanted to do was fight the two of them when they actually got serious. She couldn't help but notice that the two of them were fighting only using their skills. "Whatever then, I have already seen what I wanted to see anyway." "And that is?" Sakura asked. Sasuke glared over at Naruto. "You're not the only one looking for cunning. How did you do?" Before he had a chance to finish his sentence, Sasuke was already gone. Naruto gripped the hilt of both of his blades as he growled again. Sakura sighed out loud as she glanced up at the sky. Just when things were looking like she was going to finally be able to reunite Team 7, things go the complete opposite direction. She suddenly paused as she remembered something. She looked over at Naruto with a puzzled look on her face. "So, what now?" she asked. "Do say what?" 3 Genin yelled as they learned from their sensei that she was leaving them. "Omen, but I'm not the one to decide these things, you know," Ino said as she tried to calm them down. "What the hell do you mean you're not the one to decide things? I haven't heard of a team losing their sensei unless that person died. So why are you leaving us?" Aoi demanded. "Is it because we failed to make it past the second exam?" Suzuka asked. "No, it has nothing to do with that. Bullshit. It wasn't our fault that we failed. It was those damn Uzumakis that got in our way. If you two didn't decide to play babysitters, then at least one of us would be in the finals right about now. And it definitely wouldn't be a baka like you, Bakuryu. Aoi snorted as she crossed her arms. Obviously frustrated with their current situation. "Shut the hell up with this Bakuryu stuff. But sensei, what are we going to do from now on then, Suzuka asked, deciding to ignore her two teammates' usual banter. That has already been decided. You guys will have an even better instructor to help you guys grow. But that is still not telling us why you are abandoning us. Suzuka pressed on. A tinge of regret flashed over Ino as her expression dropped for a second. Look, Suzuka-chan, my father is retiring and they want me to take his place. After thinking long and hard about it, I think it would be best for me to take this role. I know it may sound selfish, but this is something I have to do for myself. The two paused for a moment until Ino decided to continue on. Plus, I will still check up on you guys, and I heard that your new sensei is really good. He better be helling well, Ryu yelled. Ino smiled at the boy's usual foul-mouthed mannerism and sighed before glancing up at the sky. Well, it's time for me to get going. Sorry I can't stay with you until your new sensei gets here, but I have things to do. He should be arriving here pretty soon anyway. But that said, she began to walk off, leaving Team 20 to their own thoughts. So who do you guys think our new sensei would be? Aoi asked. I don't care as long as they aren't weak and can actually teach us something. Ino sensei sucked as a sensei. No, she didn't. If it wasn't for her, then you wouldn't have those new special things that you like to brag about. Whatever, you think it could be Inyazuka-san? Suzuka asked. I don't think he would be the type who wants to take Genin, especially Genin who failed to pass the second exam. He was a part of the famous Rookie 9, who made it past the first two exams for the very first time. Aoi stated. We'll find out very soon, anyway. Ryu said as he yawned. At least that was what they thought. They quickly found themselves waiting alone on the training grounds for several hours. They first met up for their usual training at noon, but now it was already 5 in the afternoon when Ryu began to lose his cool. She's lying to us, he yelled as he stomped the ground. Maybe something came up. Suzuka said, trying to calm him down. Right, Aoi. She looked over at her and noticed that she was too on the edge of exploding. This is ridiculous. We're already the laughing stock of the rest of the Genin, and this is throwing salt in our wound. But I'm sure that there is a reason for this. Yeah, reason being that we are deemed too weak to continue playing Shinobi. Ryu added as he stood up. Hell it, I'm leaving. Just wait a little longer, Ryu. Suzuka pleaded. I'm leaving too. Aoi said. Suddenly a burst of violent wind flashed over the training ground as all three of them began to stare off in the distance where the source of the wind was coming from. Yo. What the hell are you doing here? Ryu yelled as he pointed. Uzumaki-san, Suzuka said with a puzzled expression on her face. Please call me Naruto, and for being late, I kind of got lost trying to discover my way in life. He said with a bright smile on his face. Always wanted to do this at least once. He mentally said as he chuckled to himself. Don't tell me you're our new sensei, Aoi asked. You got it, he cheered. But you're not even a Konoha shinobi, Ryu yelled. Look, again. Naruto said. Thanks to the fact that they were no longer under the shroud of the dark forest, they could get a good look at his features. His long spiky blonde hair traveled down past his ears, barely touching his cheeks, which sported 3 whisker-like marks on each of them. His new Konoha Hittite was being worn around his neck. He was wearing the standard vest with black shinobi pants and standard black shinobi sandals. He was also wearing a long black overcoat that extended to his feet and had red flames dancing along the trims, with a Uzumaki swirl sported on the back. Both of his hands were wrapped in black bandages that traveled all the way up to the sleeves of his coat. There was a medallion hanging from his neck that matched the swirl that was on his back. Both of his katana were no longer hidden by him as they both rested on each hip. The thing that caught them off guard the most, well at least Aoi, was how blue his eyes were. Perfect, Ryu said as he frowned. You don't like that I'm your new boss? Naruto said, obviously taunting the genin. Hell no. Why in hell do I have to follow a dope who abandoned the village once? Naruto's expression shifted to a dark smirk as he walked up to the genin. So says the person who had trouble handling my 5-year-old daughter. That seemed to be a low blow as their expression dropped. And who was that person to train her? Why, you, Suzuka asked. Correct, so just imagine how much you guys will improve under my tutelage. He said as he patted Ryu's shoulders and turned his back to them. Plus, this is my thanks for taking care of her while we were away. What do you mean? Aoi asked. When I'm done with you guys, you will be the strongest team in Konoha's history, he cheered, causing all 3 of them to give him a blank stare. You do know this is the same village that gave birth to the legendary, right? Aoi asked. And one of those legendary, the Iro Senin aka Jiraiya, was my second sensei after Kakashi, who is the current Hokage. I have fought with both of the other 2, and Bachan considers me to be her own son. I am the one most destined to be the next Hokage. He stated with such radiance in his aura that they couldn't help but to look on almost awestruck like. Mark my words, you guys will be remembered in the history books. But for now, let's call it a day. You're going to need to get your rest for tomorrow. See you here at noon. He said with a large grin on his face as he disappeared in a large gust of wind. Well, he did create that monster of a daughter of his. Aoi said as she tried to hold back her excitement. When he first showed up saying he was their new sensei, she was skeptical about it, but after hearing his track record, not to mention how strong Yumehime was, she couldn't help but to be excited. He better be right about that promise then because I'm going to hold him to it. Ryu said as he began to walk off. 3. Kakashi was staring at the mountain of paperwork that was glaring up at him from his desk, thanks to reinstating Naruto to the village and also promoting him to an elite, along with his wife, who was about to take the exam to become one of their Anbu captains. He still had to decide what he was going to do about their daughter, since he heard that she had handled herself against a few genin and a dot. He then glanced over at his favorite book series, literally begging for him to read it. But suddenly his door slung open with a very angry member of the council, followed by a stoic-looking Danzo hopping along on his cane. What is the meaning of this Hokage-sama, he demanded. Meaning of what, Kakashi asked in his usual bored tone, even though he knew exactly what this was about. Why did you reinstate that demon Uzumaki without any word to the council first? He was classified as a Nukenin and should be terminated on the spot, yet you allowed him to come back like he didn't do anything. Not to mention you appointed him as an elite and gave him power over a genin squad. And don't even get me started on the fact that his wife is a Nukenin from Kumo. If they catch wind that we allowed one of their rogues to join our ranks without turning them over to them, they could use that as an excuse for war. Because I felt it was the right thing to do. He added extra emphasis to I as he glared up at him with his single eye. Since I have full control over the protection of this village and someone of his stature, ability, and who has heavy ties with many of the high-ranking members of the village including the Godim is always a welcome addition. We should interrogate him to make sure he isn't a spy. Danzo suggested, finally speaking up. Denied. I have already made my decision about this. Besides, I doubt that even I could bring him in for interrogation using force, and you would lose countless men of your root unit if his wife joined in. The room grew tense as Kakashi glared at them before smiling. Relax, I know for a fact that Naruto will not cause harm toward the village. You can hold me responsible for everything he and his family do while they are staying here. Now this discussion is over, as you see I have a ton of paperwork to finish before I can call it a night. But, conversation over. Kakashi stated in a firm tone as he glared at the man. Okay, Hokage-sama. As the two exited his office, Kakashi began to sigh as he grabbed one of his books and began to read. Looks like things will be interesting for now on thanks to your return, eh? The sky was serene and blissful, not a dark cloud for miles. It was one of those types of days that you wanted to just enjoy for what it was and bask in the rays of the sun. But 3 genin had other things on their mind at that time. Today would mark the first day they would serve under their new sensei that had made a very bold promise to them. A promise that they wouldn't even dream of coming true if it wasn't for him. Despite how much he was hiding it, Ryu was probably the most excited about this change of events. He never really liked Ino as a sensei and thought she was too soft. After seeing Naruto in action firsthand, he couldn't wait to see what crazy he was going to learn from him. This time, unlike yesterday, Naruto was actually early. Beating Squad 20 to the training field by a couple of minutes. He was wearing a bright smile on his face as they showed up. Wow, he actually showed up. Ryu said in a bitter tone. Why would I miss my chance to annoy you as much as possible? Naruto retorted back with a grin on his face. Ryu only growled as a reply. So what are we doing first today? Sensei Suzuka asked, catching Naruto off guard. Clearly he wasn't prepared for that just yet. Well, since I barely know you guys, how about we start off with a brief introduction? Say your names, likes, and goals. I'll start things off. The name's Uzumaki Naruto. I enjoy eating ramen and playing with my daughter. What are your goals? Aoi asked. Classified information. How about you go next since you're so curious about me? Naruto replied with a smirk on his face. Aoi sighed and nodded her head. Izumi Aoi, I like the color blue, and no, it doesn't have anything to do with my name, my best friend Suzuka, and getting stronger. My goal is to become a strong kunoichi, preferably the strongest. Naruto nods over to Suzuka. Sakurai Suzuka. I like my friend Aoi reading in spring weather. My goal is to become stronger. Okay, what about you? Crazy Naruto said as he nodded at Ryu, causing said person to frown and Aoi to laugh. Anyway, I am the great Aki Ryu. I like to fight and create new explosives. My goal is to become one of the strongest shinobi in history. Even stronger than you. He glared at his sensei, causing said person to laugh. Well, it seems like I'm going to have fun with you guys. With that out of the way, let's get things started. He glanced over at the pond that was in the middle of the training field. Aoi was the first to follow his line in sight and realize what he was thinking. We already went through the walking on water training. She said. I know, Ino has already updated me on everything you guys have already gone through. But it also seems you guys still are not as good as you're supposed to be at it. What's the point of going through a training that we have already mastered? Ryu argued. Naruto only chuckled. Who said you guys were even close to mastering that yet? Especially since you guys haven't been through my version of the training. Say what? Aoi asked, a bit confused. Naruto only sighed as he unsheathed his Kagakusai and created a cage bunshin that began to walk on the surface of the pond. Follow my clone. What's the point? Ryu demanded. You're going to fight him. Nani, they all yelled, causing Naruto to laugh again. You guys are too serious. Don't worry, he's going to hold back. Ain't that right? Naruto asked his clone. Maybe, the clone replied, causing the three genin faces to grow pale. Naruto chuckled again as he walked over to the edge of the pond and stabbed his Kagakusai into the bank. The blade began pulsating chakra as steam started to rise from the pond. Why are you doing that? Aoi asked. This will help keep you motivated to stay above the water. The genin faces grew even paler. Oh, come on, it's not that hard. Screw it. This is my chance to pay you back for all the trouble you've caused me, Ryu yelled while charging toward the clone, only to be sent flying from a large foot to the chest, causing him to sink into the water. Baka Ryu. Aoi groaned as she deadpanned. Hot, Ryu yelled as he quickly shot back up and dashed toward the bank, but the real Naruto stopped him. I didn't say the training was over now, did I? But before he could finish, Naruto kicked him back into the pond. Back into the fiery water. You're only making this harder on yourself. You know, the clone only laughed as he watched Ryu struggle to get back to the surface. The real Naruto glanced over at the other two. What are you two waiting for? He asked with a sinister grin on his face, causing both of them to become incredibly terrified of their new sensei. Locked away in one of the desolate prison cells of the Anbu prison camp was one very irritated and battered Shinku. She didn't quite understand why she was still alive, but she also wasn't about to question this either. After the beating she took from that insane Kunoichi, she almost considered this to be better. Suddenly, there were several sets of footsteps growing closer to her. Was it finally her time to die? Had she relaxed too soon? The footsteps stopped right in front of her cell. She slowly glanced up to see the one person she didn't want to see surrounded by two Anbu guards. Come to finish me off, she spat. Yugito's eyes only narrowed as she glared down at the battered woman. No, but if that is your wish, I will be more than willing to fulfill it. Then why are you here disturbing my peace? I need answers. Is that why I'm still alive? You're alive for reasons that are beyond my control. Just be happy that I haven't decided to go against their wishes. Fine, ask away, since it's pretty obvious that I won't have anything better to do for a while. I mean, if you guys decide to keep me alive, that is. Yugito only frowned as she continued to glare down at her. Tell me more about your sensei. Why do you need to know about him? I'm the one asking questions here. Yugito spoke in a stern tone as her chakra began to flare up. Fine, just settle down a bit first, okay? Yugito continued to emit a murderous intent, causing Shinku to sigh out loud. I don't see how the other blonde can even put up with you. You are beginning to try my patience. I'm getting to it, okay? Just relax and take a breather. Answers. Shinku could feel the cell heat up, which was causing her to sweat a little. She sighed again, knowing that she was going to end up getting herself killed if she kept this up. Okay, what more do you want to know? What village is he from? Likewise you. I thought we were only talking about him. The chakra around Yugito became visible as flames began to dance around her body, causing the two Anbu guards to take a step back. Shinku decided that was the sign that she should start cooperating with her. We didn't have a village. I was an orphan for as long as I could remember. He found me when I was about 4 or 5 and took me in as his own daughter. We never really ventured into any of the shinobi villages. Of course, back then I had no clue they existed, so I never asked him why we were avoiding them. When was the first time he mentioned something about the artifacts? I don't quite remember. I think I was around 10 at the time. He pulled out some kind of crazy looking dagger and said these things would lead to the fall of the world. What did he mean by that? I don't know. I was a kid back then, okay? Not like I was going to instantly figure out what he was going on about. I just thought it was some random half-assed speech to help pass the time when we were bored. If you didn't believe him back then, why are you searching for them in order to find him? It's not that I didn't believe that the artifacts were really special. I saw him use it a lot of the time. Especially when we were being chased. Way he used it, the immense murderous intent Yugito had been emitting instantly dropped when she heard this. Yeah, is that a problem? Was he a Jinchuriki? Not that I know of. Why does that have anything to do with the artifacts? Don't worry about it. Yugito said as she began to mull over the recent news. When was the last time you saw him? About 3 years ago. We were being chased by a couple of guys, and we split up with the plan to meet up at a nearby town that bordered Tsuchi no Kuni. How do you know he's not dead? After a day, I searched for him and found the dead bodies of the guys that were chasing us, but no sign of him whatsoever. So I decided to stay in that town hoping that he would come back to get me, but he never showed up. So you figured that if you started to search for the artifacts, you would eventually run into him again. Bingo. Yugito sighed as she closed her eyes and began to walk off. What? No thanks for taking my very important time. Arigato, Yugito yelled from down the hall. Which Shinku muttered. I heard that Yugito yelled. 3. Meanwhile, Team 20 was having the worst time of their lives with this training that their new sensei deemed so simple that a 5-year-old could do it. It was safe to say that if they had a choice to go back to the Forest of Death and relive the experience they had there versus this, they would take that opportunity every time. Are you guys having fun yet? Naruto sarcastically asked as Ryu fell into the water for the umpteenth time. Both Aoi and Suzuka weren't faring any better though. Aoi had managed to focus enough to emit ice around her body, so when she fell in, it wouldn't burn as much, but she was exhausted because of it, and Naruto wasn't about to get any hints in this training. Well, it was more like torture to them. Whenever one would fall in, Naruto would increase the temperature tenfold, forcing them back up, not allowing them to get used to the heat of the water. Don't you think this is a little too extreme? Naruto turned around to see Team 20's former sensei shake her head. Behind her were Sakura and Yumehime. Yumehime liked to play this game. Yumehime cheered as she dashed over to the water. The other two Kunoichi deadpanned right before glaring over at Naruto. What, he asked, unaware of the reason why he was garnering their angry glares. Yumehime dashes past Aoi, causing her to almost fall in again, and leaped up on the clone's shoulders. Yumehime wants to play too, Papa. Not now, Yumehime. This is for them to get better. Oh, but she whined. Papa will play with you later, okay? Really? Promise? I promise. Naruto said as he gave her his nice guy pose, causing the two behind him to sweat drop. The more things change, Sakura started. The more things stay the same. Ino finished. Ino-sensei, all three genin yelled as they finally noticed that she was there. I thought I told you guys already, I'm no longer your sensei, Naruto is. But he is going to kill us, Aoi pleaded. Seriously, it's really not that hard to get used to. You guys are making this out to be harder than what it really is. Naruto stated. It would be easier if your damn clone would stop knocking us back in the hot water, Ryu shouted. If you can't handle this, then how in hell are you going to fight an enemy on top of water or any other surface that isn't ground? Not to mention, this training teaches a lot more than just walking on water. Yeah, this is taking it too far, Naruto. Sakura agreed. Naruto sighed as he glanced over at his daughter, who was still riding on his clone, somehow magically holding on as he dashed around the pond in blinding speeds. Yumehime, you can play with us a little bit, okay? Really? Yeah, Yumehime shouted as she leaped down and landed on the water as if it was the surface. You three, pay attention to her. If she can do it, I don't see any reason why you guys can't. Can Yumehime start now? Yup. Naruto said with a toothy grin. As if a gong was sounded, Yumehime shot toward the clone like a bullet and tried to drop kick him. The clone dodged to the right and barely landed a soft hit to her back, causing her to land on the water. Everyone gasped for a second until they noticed that she didn't fall in. Her body was laying perfectly on the surface, hell, her clothes weren't even wet. She began to giggle as she leaped up. What the hell is she? Aoi asked. A monster, Ryu answered. Not quite. Naruto said. She just knows how to properly manage her chakra. She has a smaller amount of chakra supply than you guys, but her control over it is what takes her a step ahead. If you can properly fight on water, then your efficiency when it comes to chakra control will be twice as great. The shinobi you are now wouldn't be able to touch the ones you'd become just from mastering this training alone. Nonsense, Ryu shouted. No, he is speaking the truth. Ino said, causing all the genin to perk up. Okay, I get that much. Why heat the water? What is the point in doing that? They add an extra element to think about, making it harder to concentrate on your chakra. In battle, there is no telling how many factors will weigh on the outcome of your fight, not to mention your body and mind's current condition. This is the best way to simulate a real-world experience without actually putting you in danger. Team 20 was stunned by this news. Did this really improve them that much? Besides, you guys won't be doing anything else until you've mastered this training. Naruto laughed. Just another factor to add to the simulation. He joked. Can you at least give us a hint on how to get better? Suzuka asked. Naruto sighed as he looked over at his daughter, who was already ready to go another round. Yumehime, come over here. Yumehime wants to play more. I know, but we will play as much as you want later, okay? Hi, she easily agreed as she dashed over to him. He lifted her up in his arm and gave her a soft kiss to the forehead, causing her to giggle again. Okay, Ryu, calm down. You are using way too much energy just trying to prove that you're stronger than the rest. Which unfortunately leads to you making an idiot of yourself in the process. Being shinobi isn't all about who is stronger or who has the better, it is about who can remain calm regardless of the situation. Even an ant can beat an elephant when the elephant is an idiot. Ryu took some slight offense to this, but understood what he meant. Aoi, I understand why you used your ice to help deal with the heat, but it is only exhausting your chakra supply faster. You may be acting tough, but I can easily see how exhausted you are, and so can your enemy. Focus more on actually staying afloat and not the pain. Ryu is actually ahead of you here. And I know you don't want that. Aoi glared over at him and then at Ryu, who was enjoying the small bit of praise that he just received. And Suzuka, hi. Stop holding back. I understand your reason for doing so, but this training should be pretty easy for you. You are the only one acting like you're having trouble with it. Suzuka's eyes widened in both shock and fear as the other two stared over at her. I may not look like it, but I can notice a lot of things other people don't. Both Sakura and Ino nearly fell over from this comment. But like I said, I understand your reasons, but this is only holding you and your teammates back. And I'm sure you don't want to do that, right? Suzuka replied in a very reluctant tone. Yumahim's hungry, papa. Me too, want to stop by my favorite ramen place. She cheered as she lifted her arms in the air. Well, with that said, let's take a break for now, so you guys can think over what you learned. We'll meet back here in an hour. Naruto and Yumahim suddenly disappeared in a large gust of wind, leaving the three genin to contemplate things. So does that mean Suzuka was the strongest all along? Ryu asked. Shut up, Baka. Ryu. Aoi spat. Hey, no reason to jump on me just because you're not the strongest. Aoi started to say something but decided to leave it be. She had always had her suspicions, but to hear them thrown in her face, it was like someone had just punched her in the stomach. Omen, Suzuka said. What for? You didn't do anything wrong at all. Aoi replied, hiding her true feelings. She was trying, but it was obvious to everyone what she really felt. You think Naruto did the right thing by bringing that out in the open? Ino asked Sakura. She had known since the beginning that Suzuka was the strongest but never said anything for fear of ruining their teamwork. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Baka has some sort of plan. Maybe this will actually be better for them in the long run. Sakura replied. I hope so. I don't want to regret my decision in allowing him to replace me. Trust me, you won't.